Chapter 14:11. Anyway, this day had been a nightmare for him. And the source of the devil was this little tiger. Since she had seen everything, Chin Mo didn't care anymore. He pulled a scarf over and wrapped it around his neck. He was about to go out. It was too awkward. Little Bojio drooped her ears and explained seriously, "Momo, I've never recognized the wrong person before. It must be because you're too good-looking and your name sounds very cute." After Chin Mo had something on him, he wasn't as passive as he was in the bathtub. He pulled the person's hand over. He lowered his eyes and his side profile was cold. He wrote on her little palm with a little force. But in the end, it was a waste of young Master Chin's good calligraphy. After he finished writing, the person's round tiger eyes were filled with confusion. "Momo, did you write Chinese characters just now? You have so many strokes." Chin Mo finally knew that this little tiger wasn't just stupid. She was also illiterate. Pulling the man along, he strolled to the desk, took out a book at random, and wrote 2 words. Chin Mo, he pointed at it, his black hair still dripping with water. "Remember this is my real name. Mo as in desert dust." Amazing. Bojio's praise was sincere. The little princess was indeed a little princess. Her handwriting was so beautiful. So it was this Mo. She reached out and touched it. There were a lot of strokes. Fortunately, she had a good memory. She could remember it after just one look. Chin Mo watched as the little tiger reached out to touch her name. For some reason, her fingers paused. Then, she closed the book. Now you should know the difference between a man and a woman. So, Chin Mo reached out and pointed at the small sofa behind her. "Sleep there. Don't come out again." Bojio knew that she was a guest and had to follow the host's wishes. When she heard Chin Mo's words, she ran back and threw herself on the sofa. She covered herself with a small blanket and only revealed her eyes. It wasn't Momo. It was Momo. He was really a guy. Such a good-looking boy. She had never seen him before. But after what happened just now, Momo definitely didn't like her anymore. As soon as he thought of this, Bojio couldn't help but rub her nose. Even her ears were drooping, looking listless. Finally, the little tiger stopped causing trouble. Chin Mo had wanted to turn off the lights and sleep. Under normal circumstances, he would be lying in bed and reading The Little Prince at this time. However, when he saw that furry little head with water vapor on it, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Chin Mo paused, as though he was thinking about something. Later on, he told himself to forget it. He couldn't go on like this. He didn't have the energy to care about others. Clatter. The lights dimmed. Bojio realized that she had done something wrong. She didn't make a sound, lying on the sofa. Eventually, she drifted off to sleep. As for young Master Chin, he didn't know if it was because there was another person in the room, or because he was thinking about something else, or because he was kissed, hugged, and seen naked today. The ups and downs were endless. So much so that when he closed his eyes, the figure of the culprit appeared in his mind. "I can't sleep." Chin Mo could only turn his head. From that position, he could see the little ball on the sofa. The little tiger that hadn't grown up looked so cute, but it would eat people. Chin Mo looked at it. He was probably too tired. His eyelids started to droop. At first, he thought that he would dream of being alone in the main house of the Chin family. Other than the nanny and assistant, no one else was around. After all, everyone in the family was so busy. It was normal for him to play alone. Moreover, he was overseas now. Surprisingly, Chin Mo didn't dream that night. Perhaps his energy and stamina were used to guard against a certain little tiger. That night, he slept very soundly. It was a snowy night. The cold moon. From time to time, the sound of an owl could be heard. This type of bird was rare in the country. But it still existed overseas. It was as though he had come to a magical world. Even the forest outside the window could be seen clearly. Morning always came at the right time. When the sun shone down, it could light up a lot of places. The white European-style villa had a completely different vibe compared to the ones in the country. This was probably the charm of the culture and architecture. The streets here were especially clean. There was also a thick layer of snow. It had been snowing for an entire night. They hadn't had time to clean it up. When they stepped on it, they would squeak. But the snow plow was already here. The driver was also wearing a furry hat, which was very appropriate for the occasion. Chin Mo woke up when he heard the music of the snow plow. He reached out to block the light that penetrated in and then turned his head. There was no one on the small sofa on his left. It was unexpected. That little tiger actually woke up earlier than him. Chin Mo raised his eyebrows. He didn't want to recall what happened last night. He walked into the bathroom in his pajamas. When he was brushing his teeth and saw the bathtub, he couldn't help but frown. Sometimes, having a good memory wasn't something to be happy about. He was considering if he should tell his grandfather that he wanted to change to a different room. As long as he stepped into this bathroom, that scene would always surface in his mind. But then, Chin Mo thought about it again. There was no need. Even if he didn't want to see the little tiger next door, he would still see her. When he saw that face, even if he changed the room, he would still remember what he should remember. But there was one thing he also said. It was that night yesterday. From today onwards, everything would return to normal. Thinking of this, Chin Mo wiped the corners of his mouth with a towel. Even though she was young, her actions showed that she had been taught well. After washing up, he even changed a set of clothes for himself before walking downstairs. Before going downstairs, Chin Mo was already prepared to see the little tiger at the dining table. After all, he hadn't forgotten what she came here for yesterday. Since she was here to freeload. Freeloading once or twice was also freeloading. She probably wouldn't miss breakfast. But what Chin Mo didn't expect was that this time, he made a wrong judgment. There was no sign of the little tiger at the dining table. Even the tea and snacks weren't there. Only the young butler saw him come down and greeted him with a plate of food. "Young master, you're awake? I prepared bread and steamed buns for breakfast. Which do you want to eat?" Chapter 14:12. Even though the butler was young, he was reliable. The food was placed on the tray. It was a standard American breakfast: fried eggs, bread slices, and a bowl of butter. Chin Mo sat at the dining table. When he picked up the glass of milk, he was reminded of a certain someone who used her tiger claws to hold the milk for him to drink. The young butler didn't understand why the young master stopped. He turned his head and greeted, "Young master." Chin Mo glanced up and asked casually, "Where is she?" "She? Who?" The young butler was confused. That was why the way of thinking overseas was different from the local way of thinking. According to Chin Mo's personality, he wouldn't ask a second time after asking once. Besides, Chin Mo didn't really need to know where that person went. He just felt that she was too young. Old Masterin walked in at this moment. Behind him was a local friend. That friend was a bearded professor. He liked Chin Mo the moment he saw him and said that he wanted to introduce his granddaughter to Chin Mo. Old Masterin smiled at the side. He just came here and definitely wanted to introduce his grandson to the people in the circle. Hence, the courtyard on this side. This day wasn't quiet. Moreover, Old Masterin had sent out an invitation before he came. Many people were curious about what the grandson of this legendary Chinese businessman looked like. Of course, those who could get the invitation were all from extraordinary backgrounds. There was an endless stream of visitors. Chin Mo had changed into an exquisitely made suit. His black hair and eyes made him look more mysterious than other children of his age. Coupled with his aura. When people first saw this noble child, they liked him. "Chin Mo? I heard my grandfather mention your name." The person who said this was a blonde girl wearing a puffy skirt. She had blue eyes and looked at him in surprise. Are you from Japan? Chin Mo glanced sideways. He had learned to distance himself at a young age. No, I'm Chinese. What a pity, I guessed wrong. The blonde girl was vexed at first, but then she smiled. My name is Angelia. They are all my friends. Do you want to go over and say hello? That way, everyone can play together in the future and eat cocoa pancakes together. Chin Mo had a cold personality, but he knew that this was a gathering organized by his grandfather for him, so he didn't reject. However, from the beginning to the end, he spoke very little. This made many foreign children look at him from the side, feeling that he was more and more like a prince. The interaction between children was very casual, and many of them would even run around. They were little radishes, after all. It would definitely be lively if there were more of them. In comparison, some little girls were even more infatuated with Chin Mo, who had been as elegant as a pine tree the entire time. He had grown up in the military compound. This meant that Chin Mo's stance was different from other kids. Someone even asked him if he had received an aristocratic English education. Grandpa smiled and said, no. He didn't say anything else. The adults were holding wine glasses, and even the air was filled with the aroma of food. There was also chicken and pizza placed on the long table, all steaming hot. There are many desserts in different shapes. This place was simply a paradise for children. Chin Mo stood there. During the intermission, he was bored and found a place to sit down. He raised his eyes and glanced at the room next door. The lights were on. Chapter 14:13. Since there were people here, why didn't they come over? Could it be that she didn't need to freeload today? Or did he not smell the scent in the air? A tiger like her. He probably wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity to freeload. After realizing what he was thinking, Chin Mo frowned. It was really too boring to think of that little tiger who liked to hug people. He turned his head and looked at his peers who were eating desserts. Chin Mo had never liked socializing, while the other children were making a fuss. He loved restoring blocks and exploring basements. When he was 3 years old, he didn't say a word for an entire day. Because of this, his family was worried that he might have autism. Perhaps the more sensitive and intelligent the child was, the smarter he was. The easier it was to encounter such a situation. It was from the beginning that he felt bored that he gradually lost his feelings. This was related to the environment he grew up in, and it was also related to himself. Chin Mo's nature was indifferent and he was too mature. The more he was like this, the tighter he wrapped himself up. Grandpa noticed this as well. That was why he suggested to bring his grandson for a change of environment. Children abroad should mature a little earlier. Perhaps he could find his little friends. But when Grandpa saw that his grandson was polite from start to finish, unlike the elegance he should have shown at his age, he knew that this arrangement wouldn't be very effective. Usually, parties with children wouldn't last too long. When Chin Mo followed his grandfather out to send them off, the lights in front of them were still on. His voice still carried the clarity of his age. Grandfather, why isn't Uncle Bo here? The two of them were good friends. If it was a banquet, the other party should have come. Old Master and didn't expect his grandson to ask him this question. He turned and smiled. Your Uncle Bo isn't back yet. She didn't come back? Chin Mo frowned. Grandpa replied. Little Bojo seems to be the only one at home, but her mother will be back at night. Your Uncle Bo will probably come with a gift tomorrow. He is a completely different person at night and in the day. Chin Mo listened casually and glanced over. How old was the little tiger? How could he leave her alone at home? However, he did not ask about this matter. It was because he found it troublesome. If he asked, Grandpa would definitely send someone to pick up the little tiger or think of something else. Chin Mo thought about this and followed Grandpa in. He returned to the house. There was a huge difference between the temperature inside and outside. The rest of them hadn't left yet. In order to show his hospitality, Grandpa even asked the chef to make a Chinese-style supper. Stacks of bean buns, bowls of century egg and lean meat congee, and glutinous rice balls brought from China were just right for the children. When Angelia saw this, her pair of blue eyes seemed to be lit up. She was very cute, and the other little radishes also surrounded her. The young butler scooped a bowl of glutinous rice balls and handed it to Chinemo. He looked at the little prince in front of him, who was so noble that he didn't look like a real person. After receiving the bowl, he said in a flat voice, "Take 2 bean buns and a bowl of porridge in a thermos box. Send it to the neighbor next door." The young golden-haired butler immediately understood and went to do it. Only then did Chin-Mo lower his lids and chew on the glutinous dumplings. The way he ate was so leisurely that the children next to him were all watching. But Chin-Mo didn't seem to mind. He didn't explain his actions to the young butler either. It was probably because there was only one child with the same bloodline as him here. It was inevitable that he would want to take care of her. This situation wouldn't happen in China. After all, there weren't any children at such a young age who would stay at home alone. Except for him, that was right. The little tiger's situation was very similar to his. They were all alone at home. It was the same even at night. When Chin-Mo ate the first glutinous rice ball, he had already concealed most of the emotions in his eyes. Grandpa was still greeting the guests. He probably wouldn't notice him. That was good. Because if Grandpa found out that he had asked someone to send something to the little tiger next door, Grandpa would definitely throw that person to him and tie him up. That would be a huge problem for him. And he hated trouble the most. It was still snowing outside. At the end of the banquet, the arrival of the Chinese-style supper reignited the enthusiasm of many children. Basically, they were all praising Chinese cuisine. The courtyard next door was much quieter. Bojo was indeed at home. She was hugging her little keyboard, lowering her head to drink her medicine. She coughed from time to time. It wasn't very serious. She was still wearing the little tiger pajamas, and her face was abnormally red. Whenever she heard the sound of a car outside, she would run to the window and take a look. Her little tail wagged a few times, and then she would curl back into the sofa. The phone on the table rang. Bojo didn't need to look to know who it was. When she picked up the phone, she nodded twice and emphasized, "Mom, I drank my medicine obediently." When the person on the other side heard this, he smiled lightly. He wanted to fly back immediately, but he could only deal with the matters here. Bojo was the one who suggested hanging up the phone. But after hanging up the phone, she hugged her little keyboard again. She squatted there and agitated for a while. Then she bit a piece of bread. At the Bo family's side, the dining table was filled with prepared food. They hired a long-term nanny. But they preferred to cook for themselves. Even if they were eating cooked noodles. But today was an exception. Mr. Bo wasn't back and Mrs. Bo was too busy. She could only let the nanny prepare the things at home. But Bojo didn't like to let the nanny take care of her. Besides, her father still had some secrets at home. Hence, early in the afternoon, Bojo asked the nanny to go back. She strolled around the room alone, dismantling the keyboard and so on. She usually did the same thing, so she didn't feel much. She didn't know why today. It was probably because it was too lively outside. But she had a cold and couldn't go out. Hence, she was really envious of those who could go to the little princess's house. Thinking of this, little Bojo ran to the window and took a look. She coughed lightly and pouted her little mouth. Her ears drooped down. After the golden-haired butler rang the doorbell, he saw such a little tiger opening the door. He didn't understand what had happened. But he was still as enthusiastic as ever. "My beautiful lady, how can I help you?" The golden-haired butler wanted to make her happy, so he made a playful expression. "I guess you will definitely like the things in my hands. They have captured many people's hearts." As he spoke, he pushed the thermos box in his hands forward. Bojo took a look and her eyes lit up. Bean paste bun. So this is called bean paste bun. The golden-haired butler chuckled. Young master asked me to send it over. Young master? Little princess? Bojo was instantly revived. The little tiger's tail swept twice and she was very polite. Please come in. The golden-haired butler took off his hat and followed her in. He placed the thermos box on the table and the two of them chatted for a while. Then, he left. She looked at the bean paste bun and century egg lean meat porridge. Bojo reached out and tugged her little ears. Previously, she was worried that the little princess would be angry if she saw him naked. But now, it seemed like that wasn't the case at all. The little princess was really too considerate. He even asked the butler to send her a bean paste bun. The more Bojo thought about it, the bigger the smile on her face. Even though she was still coughing, it didn't affect her at all. After eating, Bojo thought about it seriously. She had to thank the little princess personally. She couldn't go like this. It was too ostentatious. When the sky got darker, she would go over after equipping herself. Moreover, the little princess had already given her food. It wouldn't be right if she didn't give him a gift in return. Bojo looked at the little keyboard in her arms. She had decided to give him her favorite toy. Also, she had to tell the little princess in person. She had seen him naked. She would take responsibility for this. That was it. That was right. Bojo clenched her little fists at her reflection in the mirror. The smile on her face was a little mischievous. At this moment, Chin Mo still didn't know that the biggest problem with him sending food over wasn't that old masterin would ask. Instead, it was that the little tiger that was being fed was getting restless again. Chin Mo had never taken people saying that they liked him seriously. That was because too many people said that they liked someone, but it was just a way to express their feelings. They wouldn't care about the person who had to bear the pain and would make their own decisions. For example, in the past, there was a little girl who said that she liked him. He didn't like her. Then, the other party started crying, as if he had bullied her. Chin Mo didn't have any opinions about that girl. But at the same time, he didn't want such a thing to happen again. It was meaningless and very boring. Hence, even when the little tiger said that she liked him, he didn't take it to heart. But it was probably because the little tiger was too obedient occasionally. That was why he had a little bit of patience towards her. But when he thought about it again, she wasn't obedient but stupid. After Chin Mo and old masterin sent off the last batch of guests, he took off his little suit jacket and handed it to the golden-haired butler standing beside him. The butler lowered his head and reported. Young master, Miss Jo ate everything. She shouldn't be hungry anymore. Don't worry. When Chin Mo heard this, he frowned. When did I care about whether she was hungry or not? The golden-haired butler paused. Chin Mo's voice was very calm. It's just because they are neighbors. It's not polite if I don't send something over for such a lively gathering. Moreover, Uncle Bo is grandfather's old friend. The golden-haired butler nodded and looked at the little back view that was walking up the stairs. In his heart, he wondered if the children of China matured so early. This aura was a little too strong. However, China was really a country of etiquette. Chapter 14:14. The banquet ended. The guests had already left. As the host, old masterin was exhausted after a day of hard work. But because he was a businessman, even if it was night time, old masterin would still be busy. Old masterin had urgent matters to attend to. For example, a sudden international conference. Old masterin was worried that his grandson would be tired today, so he specially instructed his subordinates to clean up the living room and not make too much noise. There would be specialized people to clean up after the banquet. After Chin Mo sent them off, he reached out and pulled open his little suit. After entering the room, he turned back into the quiet little prince. Even his side profile was cold and indifferent. His hair was black and soft, sticking to the back of his ears. He was wearing a white shirt. When he turned his little body to untie his sleeves, the air of elegance seeped out again. At 5 years old, there weren't many children like him at this age. Using movie Queen Anne's words, her cold little boy sometimes didn't seem like a real person. But at this moment, Chin Mo was still a little immature. For example, the sigh that happened now. It was actually a little cute. Chin Mo had originally planned to take off his shirt and take a shower. But just as he was about to put his shirt down, he suddenly frowned and looked towards the floor-to-ceiling window not far away. The bulging movement made Chin Mo, who had grown up in the military courtyard, raise his eyebrows slightly. Then his handsome and elegant little face was filled with coldness. Just as he was about to press the internal line for the bodyguards on the first floor to come up. Suddenly, there was the sound of a flower pot falling on the ground. There was also the sound of the wind outside. And a certain someone muttering to herself, "Is this window so hard to open? It seems like I have to cut it open. When the time comes, my dad will say I'm naughty again. How troublesome." After hearing this sentence, Chin Mo's brows didn't relax. Chin Mo's brows didn't relax. Instead, they furrowed even tighter. You have to be troubled about cutting the window? Which normal person would cut the window? Chin Mo realized that he had started to take deep breaths again. He looked down at his upper body. He wasn't wearing anything. The temperature of his little face dropped by a few degrees. Outside the window, little Bojio was shaking her tiger tail and studying the window in front of her seriously. His moves were as fierce as a tiger, but his actual score was 2 against 5. After a long time, he felt that he was still too gentle. He simply pulled the small school bag over and was about to use the tools to open it. Little Bojio didn't expect to be discovered. After all, her ability to climb over walls was well known in the surrounding area. Although the weather today was a little cold. However, she still deliberately avoided the people on the first floor. She even took advantage of her small size to perfectly avoid the camera in the corner of the Yin family. Therefore, his actions were a little unrestrained. His tiger face was covered with a tiger hat, and he looked extremely serious. When Chin Mo lifted the curtains, he saw a little tiger that had climbed over the wall. For some reason, she was wearing a small mask on her face. Her small body was tilted to the side, and beside her was a flower pot. It looked as if she could fall at any time. However, she didn't realize that when her big round eyes saw Chin Mo, she was first stunned. Then, she immediately smiled brightly. Even the dimples on her cheeks could be seen clearly. Momo. Chapter 14-15. She couldn't help but feel a headache. Could this idiot have some safety awareness? Chin Mo pulled the window open and said calmly, "Come down." Was he angry? Bojio was still young back then. She couldn't understand why the little princess was angry. Was it because she came too late and disturbed his rest? She remembered that it was indeed quite late. He didn't sleep on time because of her yesterday. Also, he saw her naked. Bojio admitted that she felt guilty. She moved her hands and feet more nimbly. She came down when he asked her to. When she came down, she didn't forget to turn back to take her little keyboard. This action caused a thin layer of sweat to form on Chin Mo's forehead. He didn't think and said, "What are you doing?" Bojio opened her eyes wide. Her tiger tail was still sweeping. "I'm taking the little keyboard." After she finished speaking, she jumped onto the ground and shook the snow off her head. She handed the thing in her hand forward as though she was presenting a treasure. She was still wearing the little mask on her face. Her voice was muffled and she sounded a little fierce. Chin Mo finally returned to normal when he saw her land on the ground. He wasn't worried that something would happen to her. It was just that she was so young and she was lying on the windowsill alone. Didn't she consider the possibility of falling down? The more Chin Mo thought about it, the colder his eyes became. He didn't reach out to take the little keyboard. This made Bojio feel slightly awkward. She first looked up at Chin Mo's little face. When she lowered her head, she remembered that not everyone was like her and liked the unusual gift of a keyboard. She seemed to have given it to the wrong person. With this thought, Bojio felt a little depressed. But this depression didn't last long. In the next second, Bojio raised her little face. Her eyes were still round and bright. Momo, you don't like little keyboards, right? What do you like? I'll give it to you next time. I have many toys. I don't like anything. Chin Mo tilted his head. Then, his fingers paused again. Because a certain little tiger started coughing for some reason. She coughed softly, one cough after another. This made him frown again. His gaze landed on her face with the little mask. When he spoke, he sounded a little cold. It's so late. Why are you wearing a mask? This? I caught a cold yesterday. I didn't want to come over at first because I was afraid that I would infect you. But when I saw that you asked the butler to send something to me, I wanted to come over and thank you. If I wore a mask like this, I wouldn't infect you. Yesterday, I realized that your body is very weak. If I pounced on you, you would fall. I can't let you catch another cold. Bojio placed the little keyboard on her arm and used her free hand to pinch her ear. Chin Mo was about to get angry when he heard her mumbling. Which boy liked to be called weak? But at that moment, he seemed to have remembered something. Did you catch a cold yesterday? Chin Mo had always had a good memory. The visual sense was also strong. At that moment, for some reason, the image of that person curled up on the sofa without drying her hair appeared in his mind. Had she caught a cold because he hadn't let her get up and dry her hair? Thinking of this, Chin Mo frowned again. However, the little tiger did not notice it. She continued, Momo, are you going to sleep? I'll go back first today. I'll look for you when I'm better. With that, Bojio prepared to head back the way she had come. Unexpectedly, she had only just lifted her leg. The tiger's tail was caught by someone. She turned her body sideways and saw the indifferent face of the prince. Momo? Bojio didn't understand. Her eyes widened and her tiger ears perked up. Chin Mo lowered his voice. Little Bojio, are you dumb? Bojio felt the need to explain herself. Chin Mo didn't give her a chance. With a forceful move, he picked up the person who was about the same size as him. Bojio was still a little confused. But after being hugged, she didn't care about the little princess asking her if she was an idiot. She smiled happily. Chin Mo didn't give her a pleasant look. Why are you running around when you have a cold? I didn't run around today. I didn't feel well, so I went home first. Otherwise, I would have accompanied you for breakfast, Bojio replied seriously. After she finished, she couldn't help coughing. Chin Mo took a deep breath and reached out to press the phone beside him. The butler downstairs picked up the phone. He was surprised that there was an internal line at this time. Young master. Bring the first aid box up. When Chin Mo said this, people would often forget his current age. The golden-haired butler heard the words and his eyelids twitched. Young master, what's wrong? Please don't let anything happen to this young master. The importance that Chairman placed on this young master was indescribable. They had just arrived. If anything happened, Chairman would definitely return to China immediately. Chin Mo could tell what the young butler was thinking from his voice. It's not me. Bring the first aid box up. You don't have to tell grandfather. Also, bring a pot of hot water up. Hot water? Basically, the cute foreigners wouldn't understand that Chinese people had to drink hot water when they were sick. In China, if you had a cold, you had to drink more water. If your stomach wasn't feeling well, you had to drink more hot water. If your aunt came, you had to drink more hot water too. Even though the golden-haired butler had only interacted with his little master for 2 days, he had a basic understanding of his personality. Moreover, Chairman had said that no matter what request his little master had, he just had to follow it. Hence, no matter how worried the golden-haired butler was, he didn't bother Chairman. After all, they were having a business meeting. But when the golden-haired butler carried the first aid box upstairs, he suddenly realized something. If his little master didn't say it was him, who could it be? When the golden-haired butler pushed open the door, his question was answered. Unknowingly, there was a little tiger in the room. The little tiger was sitting on the sofa in the room with a small mask on her face. She seemed to have done something wrong. She was hugging her little keyboard and looking at his little master, who seemed to be in deep thought. When she saw him, her eyes lit up. "Hi, we meet again." Honestly speaking, the young butler was a little confused. Even his golden hair was fluttering. What was going on? Why was the person from the opposite house here? When he had sent the things over, she was still in the opposite room. Besides, he had been tidying up in the living room downstairs. Other than sending people away, he hadn't seen anyone else enter. He hadn't seen the little tiger either. How did she suddenly appear in his young master's room? The young butler's thoughts were all revealed on his face. He finally met someone who would show his thoughts on his face. Bojo jumped down from the sofa, wanting to tell him how she came over. Little Bojo. Just these 3 words. He successfully made the little tiger unable to be mischievous anymore. After Chin Mo called her name, he glanced sideways at the young butler standing by the door. The young butler didn't know why, but when his young master looked at him like this, he felt that his presence here was unnecessary. No, that wasn't right. There was something more than unnecessary. It was as if she was saying, "What are you doing here? You're here, and she's getting restless." The young butler, this should be the feeling of being shot while lying down, as the Chinese often say. Indeed, Chin Mo felt that the butler's appearance affected a certain little tiger. Her throat was uncomfortable and she kept coughing. She was still mischievously trying to speak. With that in mind, Chin Mo took a deep breath. Then he took the medicine box from the young butler and took out a thermometer. His little face was cold as he walked in front of a certain someone. Mask. Bojo saw this and knew that the little princess wanted to take her temperature. She cooperated and removed her little mask. Then she opened her mouth and bit on the thermometer. The young butler was enlightened. So the medicine box that the little young master wanted was for Miss Jo. But there was one thing he was really curious about. How exactly did Miss Jo come in? But it was obvious that his duties were only limited to delivering the medicine box and hot water. Because the little young master had given him a look, asking him to figure it out on his own and leave. Even though they didn't speak the same language and were of different nationalities, the meaning of the look didn't matter. She saw the door close. Little Bojo felt a little regretful. She didn't even have time to brag about her heroic deeds. This was the first time she climbed such a high wall. Besides, she wanted to ask him what the little princess liked. From the looks of it, she could only find a chance to ask Grandpa in the future. She bit on the thermometer. This time, she couldn't speak. She could only look at the little princess who was standing in front of her and picking medicine for her. Bojo blinked as she looked at him. The little princess seemed to be very impatient with her. She could tell from his expression. But he still felt very gentle. Other people wouldn't be so nice to her. He wasn't afraid that she would infect her when she caught a cold. He even gave her medicine. Bojo couldn't help but smile when she thought about this. She even jumped down from the sofa and circled around Chin Mo. The little tiger behind her kept wagging her tail. Chin Mo took out the cold medicine. From the side, he saw a certain someone with a bright smile. At that time, Chin Mo even thought, did this person know how to smile? In the end, it would give rise to emotions that even a child would have. It really made him jealous. Her parents must be special to her. Thinking of this, Chin Mo came to a sudden realization. He knew he was wrong. Because yesterday, when he saw the light that didn't turn on, he knew that she was like him. Her parents were very busy. Chapter 14:16. Look, our little tiger Bo was still very obedient. She bared her soft tiger teeth so that it would be easier for him to take the thermometer out. When she opened her mouth, her almond-like tiger eyes were still staring at Chin Mo. She looked as though she had something to say. Chin Mo gave her a cold look as though he was saying, "Don't you dare to speak again." Little tiger Bo felt that this wasn't right. She was also puzzled by the hostility her little princess had towards her. Chin Mo didn't bother about her. He took out the thermometer and looked at it. "Your temperature is normal." Bo Jiu nodded. "I don't have a fever anymore. Mom gave me some medicine in the morning." Chin Mo heard her hoarse voice. After she finished speaking, she coughed. Her head was probably a little heavy from the coughing. Even her little shoulders were trembling a little. Didn't having a fever mean that she wasn't sick? Chin Mo couldn't be bothered to say anything to this idiot. He opened a packet of medicine and took out a pill. His slender fingers touched the side of her mouth. Ah woo. Bo Jiu never rejected anything. Even if the medicine was a little bitter, it was given by her little princess. It was still delicious. On the other hand, after Chin Mo fed her, he frowned fiercely. Then he placed the medicine in her hand. "Eat it yourself." He must have been possessed. Why did he feed her personally just now? He thought about it. He must have been so angry with this little tiger that he lost his ability to think. After letting out a long sigh, Chin Mo returned to his noble little prince appearance. He walked towards the window. Then he reached out and closed the window. Then he locked it twice. Bo Jiu peeled the medicine and watched at the side. When she wagged her tail, she had a feeling that her little princess didn't actually want to lock the window. He wanted to throw her out through the window. If it was possible, Chin Mo wanted to do that. But for some reason, not only did he allow her to come down, he even asked the butler to bring the medicine box upstairs and feed her the medicine personally. He didn't know how his grandfather would react when he heard about this. Chin Mo's eyes moved. When he turned his body, he saw the little tiger peeling the medicine with great difficulty. She ate 5 pills in one go. 5 pills? Chin Mo pressed down on the man's tiger paw. "Little Bo Jiu." Bo Jiu widened her eyes. After looking at him for a while, she seemed to have been enlightened. "Momo, why do you keep sighing? Ever since I came in, you have been sighing. Are you tired? Is there anything else? Let me tell you, as a person, the most important thing is to be happy. Nothing else is important." "Pat my head." Why was he always sighing? Chin Mo watched as the little claw appeared on his head and rubbed it twice. He told himself not to bother with a sick person. Besides, there was no doubt that she was an idiot. Chin Mo looked at her, his expression ugly. "Are you done touching me?" Bo Jiu shook her head. "No, Momo, your hair is so soft and nice to touch. It's different from mine. Mine is too hard and prickles." Chin Mo smirked. "Drink the medicine and go home. Also, don't climb over the wall again." Bo Jiu paused. She lowered her lids and lifted the small bowl. She drank the medicine that the little princess had prepared for her and glanced at the window at the side. "I'll go out from the main door," Bo Jiu said. She jumped down from the sofa. She hugged the little keyboard in her hands and said, "Momo, I'll come and find you tomorrow." She planned to leave. The more she acted like this, the more Chin Mo felt annoyed by the small cough. He had said before that he didn't like being liked by others for granted. Because he needed to respond to all liking. If he didn't respond, it would be his fault. He was more resistant to such things. But this little tiger wasn't just a little stupid. Even when she was sick, she didn't know how to use this weakness to threaten him. If he asked her to leave, she would leave. She seemed to listen to everything he said. She didn't want him to respond just because she liked him. Instead, she wanted to give him something. Chin Mo turned his head. He wanted to read and not think about that idiot anymore. But just as he made up his mind, the young butler's voice came from the open door. The young butler's voice came from the open door. It was a unique American accent. "Oh, Miss Jo, are you going back? It's still snowing outside. Mr. Bo and Mrs. Bo aren't home. At this time, the heater in the living room should be cold. Why don't you wait for a while? I'll go down to get some charcoal and go with you." Bo Jo raised her eyebrows when she heard this form of address. The young butler was a little shy. "Don't Chinese people call themselves this? I just learned it from an online novel. There's a translation in the novel so I can learn a lot of knowledge." Bo Jo was still young and didn't understand. "So this is how people call themselves?" "Yes," the young butler said with certainty. This made Chin Mo frown. He couldn't focus on the book anymore. He reached out his hand and pressed the young butler's intercom with his white and tender fingers. When the young butler saw the call, the smile on his face was still there. His expression gradually changed. "Young master. I'm here." "Huh? Send Miss Jo back to your room?" "Okay, no problem." After hanging up the phone, the butler lowered his head. He was a little confused. "Miss Jo, young master asked you to sleep in his room tonight." Bo Jo was confused too. Was it such a good thing? The young butler had a lot of thoughts going through his mind. After all, he had watched the banquet. There were so many funny children, but he hadn't seen his young master treat anyone specially. He definitely wouldn't touch a cup that had been touched by others. Not to mention the food. He was a gentleman, but he didn't dance with others. The young butler even suspected that this young master from China was like what the novel said. Was he the reincarnation of the leader of some faction? He was so special because his bones were so good. He had the etiquette and alienation that a young man like him shouldn't have. He had studied it before. His young master was definitely a clean freak, and it wasn't a small one. Every time his young master wiped his hands, he would be especially careful. He would change his clothes 3 times a day. The bathroom had to be clean. Even his shoes were spotless. No one would doubt that he was a genuine little prince. However, the golden-haired butler was a little puzzled. Such a clean freak young master would actually let someone spend the night at his house. Although it had happened once yesterday. But yesterday and today were different. Yesterday was arranged by Chairman N. The young master's entire body was filled with cold resistance. But today, it was the young master who suggested it. Chapter 14:17. However, since it was the young master's order, even if he had a bunch of questions in his heart, he wouldn't say them out loud. But the golden-haired butler didn't put on his professional smile. His young master gave him a gaze. That gaze was indescribable. If he had to describe it, it would probably be to stay away from the little tiger. The golden-haired butler watched in a daze as the door was closed. He started to reflect on what he had done wrong. After all, in the novels, offending an expert would result in a tragic outcome. No, he had to learn more about China's profound knowledge and culture later. Momo. Bo Jo hugged the little keyboard in her arms. Her smile was brighter than anyone else's. "I'm back. I know you're back." Chin Mo lowered his gaze. He didn't want to talk to her. After a while, he said, "I don't call myself that anymore. It's how people used to express their politeness and humility in ancient times." "Is that so?" Bo Jo's eyes lit up again. She had grown up abroad. Usually, she only knew how to fight and study the little keyboard and a bunch of little tadpole codes. She had very little knowledge. In the past, she had interacted with children from China. But no one seemed to understand these things. The little princess was different. She knew everything. When Bojio thought about this, she felt inexplicably happy. Momo, you're amazing. The sudden praise made Shin Mo tilt his head. Don't say such nice words. Go back to your seat. Okay. She became very obedient again. But at the same time, she didn't forget to be mischievous. Momo, your ears are so red. Shin Mo took a deep breath and placed the book in his hands down. They're hot. Oh. Bojio smiled. She thought that Momo was so awkward. He was obviously shy, but he insisted that he was hot. But she was very understanding and wouldn't expose him. Also, her little princess was even more adorable when he was awkward. Bojio seemed to be addicted to teasing her pet. She would say a few words from time to time. In the beginning, Shin Mo still ignored her. Then, he allowed the little tiger to be mischievous. Bojio continued to be mischievous. She realized that she might disturb the little princess's reading. Hence, she curled up on the sofa quietly and started to touch her little keyboard. When Shin Mo saw her like that, he recalled what had happened last night. Especially after the other party drank the medicine, he was still coughing, and there was no sign of him getting better. Shin Mo stood up. Go to the bed. On the bed? Bojio was still wearing the little tiger's pajamas. When she heard his words, her ears perked up. Momo, I thought you didn't like other people sleeping on your bed? She wasn't stupid. She could tell. Momo held a grudge against a lot of people. She wasn't sure if others understood. In any case, she understood. Moreover, she was also like this. She didn't like others to understand her things. But since yesterday, her little princess had become an exception. When Shin Mo heard the question, his fingers paused. Indeed, I don't like it. That's why I can only sleep with you today. You're not allowed to touch it in the future. After finishing this sentence, Shin Mo suddenly realized something. That was, he seemed to be less and less good at pretending in front of this little tiger. He shouldn't be like this. At the very least, one had to be polite when dealing with guests. He couldn't speak like this. But he couldn't control himself. Chapter 14:18. Bojio listened to the little princess's arrogant words. She wagged her tiger tail and behaved like a loyal dog. On the other hand, Shin Mo didn't want to listen to the coughing anymore. He asked someone to prepare a bowl of pear soup. He watched as the little tiger drank a bowl. Then, she really entered the state of rest. This time, before Shin Mo entered the bathroom, he said to Bojio, "Don't come in." Bojio looked at the back view that was filled with rejection. She reached out and touched her ears. She thought about it seriously. Her little princess was shy again. She would restrain herself today. She really wanted to go in and bathe her little princess. But she was sick now. It was easy for her to infect others. But there was something she had to remind him. Momo, your body is weak. Be careful when you bathe. Don't bathe for too long. You will be out of breath like yesterday. She still dared to mention yesterday. Heh. When Shin Mo heard this before he closed the door, he tightened his grip on the white scarf. He was too lazy to take another deep breath, so he slammed the door shut and locked it. His handsome face was as elegant and handsome as ever. This time, he didn't fill the bathtub with water. Instead, he turned on the shower. When he came out of the bathroom, he had already changed into his pajamas. In Bojio's eyes, the little princess's pajamas were more pleasing to the eye. Her little old axe was a little too exaggerated. It wasn't like the little princess's pajamas. They were clean and didn't have any extra patterns. Shin Mo used the scarf to wipe his hair. He was still young. Although he was already used to being stared at, he still felt uncomfortable when people looked at him from head to toe and from his tail to his head. In the end, they looked at his side profile with a pair of big eyes. He hadn't experienced this before. After all, when other people looked at him, they would sneak peeks at him. Children would not be as shy as adults. But the word shy was obviously not suitable for a certain little tiger. Chin Mo placed the scarf down and turned his head. He was about to speak. The little tiger, Joe, spoke before him. Momo, you don't have to be shy. I will take responsibility. Take responsibility? What responsibility? Chin Mo frowned again. He wanted to warn her not to be mischievous. She should sit there obediently and not speak if she could. Why did she say she would take responsibility? Yesterday, I didn't know you were different from me and saw you naked. I called my dad and he said that the best way is to be responsible for you. I agree, I can't be a heartless man and I can't take advantage of you. That's right. Chin Mo's eyes lit up. That's right. I'm not going to be a heartless man and I can't take advantage of you. After hearing this explanation, Chin Mo's little face became even colder. He took out a small blanket from the closet and threw it directly on the little tiger's head. This was the best way to shut her up. Who knew that he had underestimated the little tiger's mischievous behavior? Chapter 14:19. After all, you're so weak. After all, you're so weak. After all, you're so weak. This sentence echoed in Chin Mo's mind 3 times. He looked at the little tiger head that was exposed. He wanted to pull her up and throw her out. But she was still counting the mistakes she had made with her little fingers, coughing from time to time. Little Bojo, are you an idiot? Chin Mo tried to hold it in, but the only thing he could say was coldness. The little boy Bojo didn't understand how she was stupid. Chin Mo glanced over. He was wearing his pajamas and looked noble. Why are you feeling pity? Can you kiss me casually just because you don't have a cold? How can you be so optimistic? Didn't I tell you yesterday to stay 1 meter away from me? Didn't you tell me to stay so far away from you so that I wouldn't kiss you? Bojo seemed to have understood something. Her eyes widened. Chin Mo arched a brow. Why else? Oh. Bojo was disappointed for a second. Then, she said, anyway, I will be responsible for you. Besides, Momo, you've misunderstood. I'm usually very reserved. I'm so passionate because I want you to know my sincerity. Chin Mo turned his head. No need. No need for what? Bojo scratched her face. She didn't understand. Chin Mo looked at her. His gaze was calm. I don't need you to be responsible. Also, heartbreaker isn't used to describe girls. How did you learn Chinese? I didn't learn it well. Bojo felt a little guilty. Those words were like pictures. There were too many gestures. Sometimes, she remembered them but she didn't know where to use them. But that wasn't right. Her dad had said it over the phone. Being irresponsible meant being a heartbreaker. Anyway, Bojo didn't care if it was used to describe boys or girls. She would never be a heartless man. The current situation was that the little princess didn't want her to be responsible. Her dad also said that she could be tough but she couldn't force others. Little Bojo thought about it. In the end, she looked up and wagged her tail. Momo, tell me when you want me to be responsible. That situation would never happen. At that time, Chin Mo had thought that way. Moreover, he really didn't want to discuss this kind of thing with a little tiger. It would make him seem very childish. His gaze swept over. Seeing that she was still curled up on the sofa, his brows furrowed once more. I'm not asking you to go to the bed. The sofa was very close to the window. Didn't this idiot know that there would be wind on this side? I haven't showered yet. I'll go after I shower. Ever since the little princess had come out of the shower, she had been smelling his scent. It was so fragrant and so good. She wanted to take a shower too. Chin Mo watched her torment. Anyway, he understood that it was impossible for her to settle down. Half a minute passed. Momo. Chin Mo was sitting on a chair with a book in his hands. No matter how late it was, he would read a few books before going to bed. This was his habit. Chin Mo watched as the little tiger tugged at his sleeve with her claws. Her eyes were black and she looked very obedient, but in fact, the sparkle in her eyes indicated that she was going to be naughty again. Both of them looked to be 5 years old, and their heights were about the same. In comparison, Chin Mo was 3 centimeters shorter than Bojo. Chapter 14:20. Hence, the aloof young Master Chin didn't want to stand up. Which boy would be happy that he was shorter than a little tiger? This was one of the reasons why he asked her to stay away from him. But Bojo didn't know. If she wanted to shower, she had to take off her clothes first. Now that Momo was here, she couldn't just roll around and take off her clothes like she did the last time. This wasn't good. It would cause Momo's misunderstanding of her to deepen. After all, she was still very shy and reserved. But she couldn't open the zipper behind her. This was the disadvantage of having short arms. She had jumped for a long time just now, but she still couldn't pull the zipper to the end. At home, she would either roll around and take it off or her mother would help her take it off. Today, she could only trouble her future pet. "Help me pull this down." As Bojo spoke, she turned her small body and obediently wagged her tail. The zipper was pulled down halfway. Since it was a clumsy little Axe pajamas, no one would be able to tell if they didn't look carefully. Now, because of her action, Chin Mo also saw the fair and tender little back. Chin Mo also saw the fair and tender little back. Suddenly, his ears turned red and he tilted his head. "Little Bojo. What is it?" Bojo turned back and saw the little prince with a thin layer of pink on his face. He was extremely cute. He couldn't help but reach out and hug the person's waist. He said angrily, "Momo, you're shy again. Don't be shy." Asterisk bang. Asterisk the veins on Chin Mo's forehead were completely broken. He watched as the little tiger picked him up from the chair, wobbled, and put him down. His breath was completely stuck in his chest. "Little Bojo." Bojo scratched her ears. I'm here." Chin Mo looked at her and didn't want to speak. Which boy would like to be carried around by a girl? His dignity as a boy was really. Chin Mo adjusted his breathing. Again and again, until the little face returned to its cold and noble appearance. Men and women shouldn't touch each other. It's such a simple logic. You should know that in the future, don't let a man help you with your zipper, even if you're a child. When Chin Mo said this, he didn't sound like an old man. It was probably because his face was too good-looking. Bojo nodded as though she was being lectured. She continued, "I know, but Momo, you're not like other boys. It's okay for you to help me zip up. We're going to sleep together in the future." "Who slept with you?" Chin Mo pressed his throbbing temples. Then, he looked at her tiger pajamas that were about to collapse. He shouldn't have been soft-hearted, and he shouldn't have let this person sleep here. He didn't know if it was too late to throw her back. But he had heard the conversation just now. There was no one at the Bo family's side. Her cough had not gone away, and she was so clumsy that she could not even walk properly. Bojo didn't know what her pet was thinking about. She poked him with her fingers, her back itching. Chin Mo's gaze landed on her when he saw her movements. It was probably because of the material of her pajamas. After the zipper was unzipped, it would prick his hand. Therefore, her fair little back was a little red after being pricked. Chapter 14:21. Okay. She would be obedient when she needed to be. Little Joe always followed this principle to the end. Chin Mo lowered his lids. Once he decided to do something, he wouldn't be awkward anymore. Like a mature adult, he didn't just help Bojo with the zipper, he also removed the hood from her pajamas. Because he was so close, he could smell the sweet milk scent on the little tiger. A child would always be a child. While Chin Mo was deep in thought, he completely neglected the fact that he was also a child. After unzipping the zipper, Bojo could go to the bathroom and remove the little tiger pajamas herself. She was especially serious when she showered. At the same time, she thought about whether she had redeemed her image in the little princess's heart after today. In conclusion, it should be considered a success. As little Bojo thought about it, she splashed some shampoo on her head. The white foam accidentally flowed into her eyes. She used her little hands to rub them and started to wash again. It was a manly way of washing. Young Master Chin didn't see her washing. If he had seen it, he would have corrected her. After the shower, Bojo looked even fairer. She didn't let go of the little keyboard in her hands. Her hair was wet and looked very naughty when she shook it. There was even a lock of hair that was dyed silver sticking out. She looked like a cat that had just been scooped out of the water and hadn't had time to clean its fur. There would always be a cat that wanted to dress up as a little tiger. This was the perfect example. Chin Mo glanced over. In the end, his gaze landed on the hair that was dripping with water. This time, the person didn't go under the blanket. Chin Mo knew the reason clearly. Yesterday, because he had spoken, she had been afraid to disturb him. Hence, she had slept like that. With this thought, all of Chin Mo's impatience disappeared. It was obvious that the little tiger didn't know how to dry her hair. She held onto a towel and rubbed her head randomly. She coughed from time to time and hummed a tune. In the end, Chin Mo couldn't stand it anymore. Come here. When Bojo heard this word, she was confused. Then, she walked over with a confused expression. Chin Mo didn't say anything. He took the white towel over. His aura was cold. It was a deterrent. Children are like that. Perhaps, sometimes, they might not necessarily listen to adults. But when he met someone of the same age who was colder than him and couldn't see through him, he would subconsciously listen to him. Young Master Chin's aura had never been a joke since he was young. In the military compound, no matter how much those naughty kids liked to cause trouble, they would subconsciously restrain themselves in front of him. That was why all the grandfathers in the courtyard called him the Child King. Of course, one couldn't just rely on one's temperament. There was a certain amount of fist power in it. Chin Mo wasn't the kind of person who wouldn't fight. It was normal for boys to behave this way. But his style had always been different from hers. Bojo was convinced. It was the kind of coldness that emanated from the inside out after one hit that made people not dare to stab him again. This was the voice of a brat from a certain military compound. Chin Mo had never imagined that there would be a day when he, the king of children, would have to take care of a child. After he took the towel, he thought of something else. Chapter 1422. When Chin Mo realized this, his fingers paused decisively. Then he said, "Sit there." Bojo didn't understand what the little princess was thinking. She hugged the little keyboard and sat at the designated spot. Her head was covered with a towel. Following that, a very gentle force was exerted. That kind of strength could easily make people drowsy. Coupled with the fragrance of the shower gel, it made him feel even more comfortable. Bojo hugged the little keyboard and wore her pajamas. The way she allowed him to wipe her hair was very adorable. But life depended on one's skin. Bojo wouldn't give up any chance to make a move. When Chin Mo wiped her hair, she played with the corner of his shirt. When she was discovered, she met his cold eyes. Then she smiled, revealing her little canine teeth. She lowered her head and continued playing. Chin Mo wasn't going to play tricks with this little tiger on this matter. In any case, she had already done things that were worse than that. Halfway through, the person in front of him coughed even more violently. Even her breathing became unstable. Chin Mo thought for a moment and fed her a lozenge. After taking the medicine and taking a shower, she could officially climb into bed. Bojo was a little sleepy. She probably wasn't feeling well. She really couldn't sleep. When she saw the little princess take a blanket to the sofa, she felt a little depressed. Although she had expected that the little princess wouldn't like to sleep with her, she didn't think that he would like to sleep with her. But when she saw this, she still felt that she hadn't tried hard enough. Once she recovered, she would force herself on him. She couldn't do it now. She might infect the little princess. Bojo thought about this and decided to hug her little keyboard to sleep. Chin Mo lay on the sofa. There was only one wall lamp left in the entire bedroom. It was still snowing outside. When the owl flapped its wings, it would always move the snow on the Christmas tree. Occasionally, there would be the sound of a dog barking outside. These sounds had a hypnotic effect. But anyone who had a cold or fever would know this. Fever was never something that could be cured in a day. Especially a child. Moreover, Bojo was obviously suffering from a fever. Otherwise, she wouldn't keep coughing. In reality, she wouldn't be able to sleep well. Bojo realized this too. That was why she hugged the little keyboard and tried not to cough. It would disturb Momo's sleep. Just as Bojo was thinking about this in a daze, a fair little hand landed on her forehead. After feeling the slight heat, her cold little face was even colder than before. It must be a little fever. Fortunately, it was not a high fever. Chin Mo walked to the side and brought a cup of warm water over. He knew that the little tiger wasn't asleep, so he reached out and pulled her up. Momo. Bojo's eyes were still wide. Chin Mo placed the cup in front of her mouth and said only one word, drink. Bojo lowered her head, her stomach rumbling. After she finished drinking, he gave her some more medicine and used his left hand to touch her forehead again. Bojo was very obedient. Chin Mo glanced at the things in her arms. The keyboard is cold. If I don't hug something, I won't be able to sleep. Bojo said whatever was on her mind. Momo, why don't you let me hug you? Chapter 14:23. Her plan was exposed. Bojo felt a little regretful. She changed to another object but the effect was the same. He probably noticed her discomfort. Chin Mo asked casually, can't sleep? Her voice was a little muffled. She probably wanted to cough. Chin Mo walked over and poured another glass of water. But this time, other than water, he took a book from the bookshelf. That book was the one he read every day. Bojo recognized the page. The little princess had been reading it yesterday. Move over a little. Chin Mo stood beside the bed. His expression didn't change much. But when Bojo heard these words, she instantly became lively. She moved her small body to the left. The space wasn't just a little. After she finished this action, she promised seriously, Momo, don't worry. Even if we sleep together, I won't touch you like I did yesterday. Don't be afraid. Chin Mo's hand that was lifting the thin blanket tightened. He looked up and gave her 2 words. Shut up. Bojo was very happy. She didn't care about the little princess's resistance at all. She understood that he was shy. If Chin Mo knew that this little tiger attributed everything to his shyness, the veins on his forehead would probably rupture again. But fortunately, Bojo was still obedient sometimes. He laid on the bed with his big eyes and a small face like an angel's, looking at people with a fierce look on his face. Chin Mo leaned against the head of the bed and opened the book, 1001 Nights in his hands. His melodious and cold male voice rang out. There was a little childishness in it. It was said that in ancient times, on an island between ancient India and China, there was a kingdom called Sazan. The king was called Shanuya. Every day, King Shanuya would marry a woman and spend the night in the palace. But every day, when the rooster sang, he would cruelly kill the woman. Children loved to listen to stories. To Bojo, the things that her father did were treated as stories. But Mr. Bo was too busy, so he didn't have much time to tell stories. To be precise, This was the first time someone specially read her a bedtime story. At first, Bojo was in a daze. But soon, as she listened, her coughs lessened. All her attention was focused on the little princess's side profile and the fascinating story. Time passed bit by bit with the flow of the moonlight. The two of them were different from the others, probably because they were too similar. No one would read him a bedtime story. He looked like a little prince, yes. He was a lonely little prince. Every night, she would read and sleep alone. Although there was still no one to tell him a bedtime story. However, the little heater lying beside him and listening to him with her head tilted to one side made him feel that there was nothing wrong with letting her come over once in a while. The sound of reading continued. He had just read the third story of the 1001 Stories. There were already people on the first floor. That person was none other than Mr. Bo, who was wearing a black trench coat with a bouquet of roses pinned on it. Originally, he was here to bring his little Joe back. Grandpa gestured for him to listen to the noises upstairs. Chapter 14:24. Grandpa smiled too. I heard from the butler that my grandson knew there was no one in the Bo family, so he specially asked him to send supper over. This morning, it was funny. He was a little unhappy that your little tiger wasn't around. Mr. Bo tilted his head and lit a cigarette. No matter what he did, there seemed to be an uneasy aura around him. That's good. There have been many things recently. I'm assured that she is with you. Grandpa rarely knew what he was doing. He asked, "That's why you didn't go back to the castle?" Ah. Mr. Bo flicked the cigarette ash with his long and slender fingers. He suddenly smiled. I'm not going back because I enjoy living off a woman. Of course, Mr. N won't understand. After all, my wife is too capable. Old Master N felt that it was enough to have such a friend despite the difference in age. He didn't feel ashamed of living off a woman. Instead, he felt proud. Speaking of which, he hadn't been active for a long time. Recently, he started again. It seemed like it wasn't peaceful outside. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stayed in such a place. It was probably because he wanted to protect his family. After all, he was no longer the king who came and went alone. This man was a legend who could shake many industries. However, he was raised as a little puppy at home. No, that wasn't right. The only person who would treat him as a little puppy was Joe's mother. Mr. Bo understood what Grandpa meant by his gaze. However, he didn't care. He left behind a sentence. I'll come and fetch my little Lord Joe tomorrow. Then, he disappeared into the boundless night. However, even though he was standing under the streetlight, he could still see the reflection on the second floor. The two little people weren't close to each other, but they were on the same bed. Mr. Bo smiled lightly. It was rare for his little Lord Joe to like someone so much. However, the kid from the Chin family was quite capable. He knew how to read stories to make children happy. He had never told his little Lord Joe fairy tales before. Mr. Bo stretched out his hand and flicked the cigarette but into the rubbish bin in the courtyard. When he raised his lids, he realized that the lights in the house were turned on. He smiled. He was prepared to walk 2 rounds outside to disperse the smell of smoke before entering. First, he had to make sure that he didn't smell so bloody. Mr. Bo's legs were long. When he moved in the night, he was like an ancient night walker, landing silently. Soon, he changed into a new set of clothes in the basement. When he reappeared in the living room, he was wearing a pure white t-shirt with casual cotton-padded pants and a pair of glasses. The way he dressed made him look like a college student. Her temperament was outstanding and clear. In addition, this person was too coquettish. That's right, she was acting coquettishly. Because at the moment he appeared, Yi Shiwen's eyes widened. He put on a sleepy expression, reached out his hand, and hugged the back of the woman who was wearing a business suit and was making medicine in front of the kitchen counter from behind. He put his chin on her shoulder naturally, sniffed the nice fragrance, and dragged out his voice lazily. Why did you come back so late today? Both Lord Gio and I have no food to eat. Being hugged by him, the figure's face was still a little red. They had been married for so long. But for some reason, he was still the same as when he first met this person. It was probably because the other party was 3 years younger than him. Therefore, whenever they were intimate, she would always feel numb all over and take advantage of the other party. Chapter 1425. Isn't there a nanny? As a female CEO who was good at handling company affairs, she was always exceptionally patient when facing her lover. She wasn't as cold as the rumors said, but her temperament was still there. When she turned her face, her figure was very beautiful. Mr. Beau didn't move his hand away. He seemed to know that she was uncomfortable, but his breath still lingered on her snow-white neck. The nanny doesn't cook well. As expected, the figure trembled. I'll cook you some porridge. I don't want to eat porridge now. The hint was probably too obvious because his slender fingers were already on the button of her suit. With a smile, his voice was a little deep. Gio isn't here today. She couldn't resist that kind of temptation. Even if someone said that the person in that family wasn't as simple as he looked. She still couldn't resist. And he was like a little puppy in front of her, always making her comfortable. Only in this kind of situation would he show his ruthless side. When she realized that she was being carried and placed on the kitchen counter, the temperature in the room was already very high. Everything seemed to be indescribable. Only her heartbeat could be heard. And the feeling that she couldn't control it anymore. She didn't even have time to ask where he went today. She was brought into the entanglement of his whole body. Probably because the two of them didn't know each other through dating. Hence, even now. Sometimes, she still couldn't let go. But the person younger than her didn't allow her to let go. He always thought of ways to make her lose her calmness. The sound of the button falling on the floor was very loud. This always made people feel ashamed. When the numbness hit her, she felt that the person was ridiculously mature. How could he be a little puppy? It was probably because the first time they met, the impression was too deep. She picked him up and brought him home. He was raised by her at home. It was as if it had naturally become her possession. From the time they met to the time they got married, it had only been 3 days. She had never asked if he was willing. Now that her daughter was already 4.5 years old, it seemed a little inappropriate to ask such a question again. But why was the person in front of her getting younger? On the other hand, she was already 3 years older than him. She was about to get old. She didn't know why, but he didn't seem to see it. Was it because young people had more needs? Thinking of this, it was inevitable that his thoughts would drift. He was unhappy that she wasn't paying attention. He bent down and bit her collarbone. Mrs. Beau, is it because the temptation outside is too great that you can't even pay attention when you go home? Shouldn't she be the one asking him this? He was still a graduate student. She had seen how hot the girls in the university were when she had driven to pick him up the last time. Those people didn't seem to mind that her Gio was still on top of his head. They say men with children are more attractive. Others said that it was impossible for him to have a child at his age. He really didn't look like a father. She still remembered the big and small pair sitting on the steps of the university, looking at her with the same expression. Their faces were full of pity, as if she would be a heinous villain if she stood them up again. 80% of Gio's personality was inherited from him. She also knew that when those hot girls from the university saw her picking him up, they thought she was his sister. However, she had never told him about this. After all, young graduate students were more likable. But he seemed to be very busy recently, looking at the face in front of him that was obviously not in the right state. Mr. Beau narrowed his eyes and the strength in his hands increased. She still wanted to struggle. Don't, clothes, there are many of these clothes at home. When their breaths were really hot. It was still snowing outside. In the darkness, only their body temperature kept rising. Her entire body was covered in a thin layer of sweat after being tortured by him. He pushed her long hair away from her face and allowed her hands to wrap around his neck. His gaze was as deep as the night outside. Honestly speaking, when would his wife stop thinking about age? He was younger than her and it wasn't something he wanted. But in her eyes, he always seemed to be different. Mr. Bow laughed in a low voice and carried the exhausted beauty up horizontally. He returned to his little puppy image. The weather outside only cleared up the next day. When the sun shone down, everything seemed to be full of life. The European-style courtyard was always trimmed beautifully. There would definitely be lawns and trees. There would also be a white fence. There were green plants climbing on one side of the wall. Along with the sunlight, they formed fragmented silhouettes. Chin-mo stretched out his hand to block, but he still felt that it was dazzling. This made him look down instinctively. He didn't expect to see a white and tender sleeping face. When a certain little tiger slept, she really looked like a little angel. Her eyelashes were very black and long. Each of them was distinct. When they fell down, they could even fall on her face. Her cheeks were chubby. Her mouth was slightly open and she bit her thumb. She was very mischievous as she moved her thumb. Not only that, one of her hands was placed on his waist. She looked as though she was protecting him. Chin-mo took a deep breath. Did this little tiger think that she was taller than him? Was that why she was hugging him like this? After calming his expression, he wanted to lift the small blanket on them and get off the bed. But the moment his fingers moved, he heard her call, Momo. She didn't wake up. She had called out Momo unintentionally. Maybe she had dreamed of something. But that soft and childish voice made Chin-mo's heart soften, which he shouldn't have. He didn't wake her up. Instead, he stretched out his hand and placed it on her forehead. The two of them were very close to each other. They could touch each other just by raising their hands. For Chin-mo, he had never been so close to someone of the same age. After testing the other party's temperature, he turned his face away. He didn't know why he fell asleep in such a position last night. No matter what, he couldn't let this little tiger know. It was a pity for our young Master Chin. Before he got to know a certain little tiger, young Master Chin never knew what a dark history was. But now, when he thought of the difference in their height, the fact that he was carried out of the bathtub by a little tiger yesterday, and the fact that the other party had seen him as a girl because of his appearance, Chin-mo couldn't help but narrow his eyes. When he got up, he felt that his throat was a little uncomfortable. He loosened the collar of his pajamas and planned to wash up. Chapter 14:26. Together? Chin-mo's frown deepened when he heard this. He turned his head and saw the little tiger climbing up from the bed. She bent her legs and held onto her little keyboard with one hand. She was rubbing her eyes with the other. She looked like she was about to jump down. Chin-mo didn't want to take a deep breath anymore. Instead, he reminded her calmly, "Little Bojo, you're a girl and I'm a boy. Tell me, how are you going to pee with me?" MMH? That tone was definitely not too happy. Bojo sobered up instantly. She paused her claws and smiled. "I forgot again. Momo, don't be angry. I know how to whistle. I can stand outside the door and whistle for you." Chin-mo turned his head and smiled coldly. Then, he stuffed her into the blanket and said, "Stay here." What a joke. Someone was whistling outside. Who could come out easily? He had also said that the only reason he could tolerate this little tiger was because she would listen to whatever he said. When Chin-mo finished washing up and came out, Bojo was still on the bed. She was probably too bored from waiting and was doing somersaults. When she saw that he was done, she rolled like a tiger and straightened her body. Chin-mo didn't have extra slippers here, so he let her wear his. At first, he didn't want to care so much about her. After this person entered the bathroom, she lowered her head and started to wash her face. Chin-mo pulled her back. He lowered his head and rolled up her sleeves in a few seconds. It was purely because he couldn't stand this idiot's actions. However, Bojo realized something. Little Princess Chin's throat seemed to be uncomfortable. She couldn't have infected him, could she? As she was thinking about this, Bojo wasn't very serious when she was washing up. She casually washed her face and ran to the study table. She remembered that the little princess had placed the medicine box here last night. At this moment, Bojo didn't recognize any medicine. Moreover, it was written in Chinese characters. She couldn't understand it. But she recognized the picture printed on it. Based on her good memory, she recognized the box that the little princess had fed her yesterday. Yesterday, her throat didn't hurt so much after eating this lozenges. After taking it out, he carefully dismantled one pill. Qin Mo saw the little tiger's actions but didn't pay much attention to it. He even felt that this little tiger was finally not stupid and knew how to find medicine for itself. But in the next second, Qin Mo froze. That was because the little tiger used its height advantage to lift his chin and stuff a pill into his mouth. It was slightly sweet with a hint of bitterness. The taste of Chinese herbal medicine spread from the tip of his tongue. Qin Mo's eyes widened. Not because of anything else, but after that person fed him the pills. She even rubbed his head and said, "Good boy, it's not bitter." As a boy, was he afraid of hardship? Besides, little Bojo, what kind of position are you in? Young Master Qin smiled coldly again. Anyway, it was already dawn. It didn't matter if he threw her out. But before he could say anything, the little tiger looked at him with her big eyes and said, "Momo, you must tell me if you feel uncomfortable. For example, your headache. Yesterday, I had a headache and then a fever. The fever was too stuffy and I couldn't come out to play with you. But this is also my fault. I know that my body is too weak, but I still came to find you." Very good. Once again. Chapter 14:27. Qin Mo looked at her. This was the first time he wanted to refute someone so seriously. Little Bojo. MMH? Bojo scratched her ears. She wanted to touch his head, but the little princess didn't seem to like it. Hence, she could only retract her hand. Qin Mo said coldly, "I'm not weak. Remember this." "Okay, you're not weak. But I don't want you to get sick," Bojo said logically. "It's so uncomfortable to be sick. Not only do you have to take medicine, you can't go out and play. You can't eat meat either. You can only eat porridge and vegetables. It's so painful. If you get sick like this, my heart will definitely ache." Hearing this, Qin Mo's gaze paused. He looked at the fierce little face under the morning sun. Maybe it was because the sun was too good today, or maybe it was because there was no impurity in those eyes, which made his heart feel warm. No one could notice his discomfort in time. Since young, his mother had been pampered like a princess by his father. Hence, she was always slower in terms of common sense. She wouldn't take care of him. He knew that he had never blamed anyone. But sometimes, he felt a little lonely. Especially at night, when he felt uncomfortable for the whole day. People would only know that he was sick the next day. That was why he gradually got used to it. When he was sick, it didn't matter if other people were around or not. Even his grandfather, who hadn't passed away, might not be able to notice it immediately when he was sick. But this little tiger knew and gave him a lozenge at the first moment. She even told him her heart would ache when he was sick. Qin Mo moved. His fingers instinctively wanted to hold on to something. It was her restless claws that entered his hands. It was soft and suitable for his hands. Except for the fact that she was taller than him. Actually, this little tiger was quite pleasing to the eye. When she didn't speak, she was very obedient. As for other aspects, he could teach her slowly. Since she was the one who took the initiative to come to his side, he had no reason to reject her. It wasn't right. Anyway, her parents didn't care about him. It wasn't a problem for this person to belong to him. Although he didn't have any specific concept of raising a child. But it shouldn't be difficult to raise such a little tiger. What's more, a certain someone was stupid enough to want to buy him. Chin Mo seemed to have confirmed something. He glanced over and helped Bo Jio roll her sleeves. His voice was calm. Do you think everyone is like you, only liking to eat meat? I'm not the only one who likes to eat meat. Take another 10 steps and you will see the red-haired little William. He likes to eat meat too, but he's afraid of me. Every time he makes a turkey at home, he would offer some to me. His face would always be red. Bo Jio explained. The roasted turkey is delicious. Chin Mo raised his eyebrows and singled out the name without changing his expression. Little William? Yes, it's nearby. We even made an appointment to eat hamburgers together. Now we can only wait for my cold to recover. Bo Jio was busy explaining things to little Princess Chin. She didn't realize that Chin Mo's gaze was different from before. Previously, he had given himself a set environment. She thought she had no one to turn to but him. Now, it seemed that this was not the case at all. Also, the name William would only be given to a boy. Chapter 14:28. Chin Mo narrowed his eyes. He was as cold as a prince. When are you guys meeting? The day after tomorrow. Bo Jio told her little princess everything she knew. Chin Mo seemed to see the desire in her eyes to go out to eat hamburgers. After helping her roll up her sleeves, he said casually, "Your cold should be gone the day after tomorrow. You can go out to eat." When Bo Jio heard this, she was even happier. Her tiger eyes lit up. "Momo, do you want to go with me?" Her father had said that if she wanted to raise him, she had to show some sincerity and use feelings to communicate. Bo Jio thought about it and felt that other than sleeping, going out to eat meat was the best way to increase his affection. She didn't know that Chin Mo was waiting for her to say this. He smiled. "Okay." He agreed. Bo Jio blinked. She didn't dare to believe it. After all, Momo had rejected her last night. He had wanted to throw her out of the window. Why was he different today? As expected, her father's words were true. A good night's sleep can increase feelings. Bo Jio was happy for a while. When she came back to her senses, she realized that little Princess Chin was wiping her hands. She seemed to have become cleaner after being by his side. This was probably what her father had taught her before: you get stained by the company you keep. When she was young, Bo Jio had a strong comprehension ability. That was why Chin Mo would always have a headache trying to correct her understanding of Chinese characters. The young golden-haired butler was already prepared to send Miss Jio back to the other side as soon as he arrived. After all, he had overheard his young master using a restrained voice to say, "Little Bo Jio." He didn't expect that. Not only did his young master not allow him to send her back. After breakfast was served, he naturally peeled an egg for Miss Jio, who was sitting opposite him. The most difficult thing to accept was, he even blew on the bowl of porridge beside his hand and pushed it to the opposite side. Wait a minute. The butler started to recall the energetic Chinese culture he had learned about on the internet. The main characters didn't seem like they would do this. His young master didn't seem like he was taking care of someone his age. Instead, he seemed like he was raising a child. No, that wasn't right. He was more meticulous than raising a child. There was a rule in raising a child here. It was to cultivate the child's ability to take care of himself. Things like peeling eggs and blowing on porridge to cool down would never happen here. He didn't know if he had accidentally failed to control his rich expression. Young master, who was eating the soup dumplings, looked up and glanced at him. The golden-haired butler shivered and immediately stood up with the tray, assuming a standard standing posture. Chin Mo retracted his gaze and lowered his head to take another bite of the xiaolongbao on the bamboo chopsticks. It had been a long time since Bo Jio had such a scrumptious breakfast. However, there was something she was ashamed of. She preferred to eat with a spoon and didn't have many chances to use chopsticks. Therefore, when she reached for the soup dumplings with her chopsticks, her movements were a little clumsy. The clip fell off. The clip fell off the second time. For the third time, little Tiger Bo simply poked it with her chopsticks. After she poked it up, she howled and placed it all in her mouth. Chapter 14:29. Little Tiger Bo felt so happy that she was about to fly. She wanted to use the chopsticks to poke the second dumpling. However, little Princess Chin stopped her. Chopsticks aren't used like this. The voice was calm. Then, he reached out and held her hand. Then, he started to teach her how to hold it. Bojio tilted her head and looked at his posture. She moved the chopsticks in her hand downwards and held them again. Her hands were still a little small. It was still too slow for her to hold things like this. But when she looked at the little princess again, her hand holding the chopsticks was beautiful and accurate. It seemed like it wasn't because of the chopsticks. Bojio grabbed her hair. She was a little annoyed. I'm too stupid. Although Chin Mo kept calling a certain little tiger stupid, it didn't mean that he would let the little tiger he planned to raise feel inferior to others. Moreover, the little tiger was used to living abroad. It was understandable that she couldn't hold the chopsticks well. He had never raised a child before, but he knew that children had pride. With this thought, he raised his head and said to the golden-haired butler, "Try taking the chopsticks." The young golden-haired butler was a little confused when he heard this request. He didn't know what his young master's intention was at all. But as a qualified butler, he had to complete his master's request. Even though he was a foreigner, he had never used something like chopsticks before. But he had read about it many times in novels. He had always admired the Chinese for being able to use two small pieces of wood as cutlery to eat. The experts in the novels could even use one of the chopsticks to kill people. The young butler believed that as long as he learned slowly, he would be able to do it one day. Hence, when Chin Mo said this, the young butler was very willing to try. With great respect, he picked up the pair of serving chopsticks on the dining table and aimed it at the steaming soup dumplings. The first time, it didn't come up. The second time, it slipped. The third time, he recalled what his young master had said when he was teaching Miss Jo. He didn't use enough strength and one of the chopsticks actually fell. His face was full of question marks. Was it so difficult? The young butler's expression was so rich that he could make an emoticon. As you can see, some adults don't even know how to use chopsticks. It's normal that you can't use them well. At least you can pick things up. MMH. Bojio was elated. She shook her little tiger tail and nodded. Seeing this, Chin Mo thought for a moment and brought the soup dumpling he had picked up to the little tiger's mouth. Since it was all his, he naturally had to be responsible for feeding it. Although he wasn't used to it, he would take it slow. Fortunately, this little tiger was smarter than ordinary people. She would definitely be able to learn how to hold chopsticks quickly. The young butler, who had not finished practicing, was speechless. He felt the deep malice of this world, all because of the chopsticks, the utensils that tested the foreigners. But, young master, don't you think you're being too nice to Miss Jo? Are you going to raise Mr. Bo's child? If Chairman An knew about this, he would definitely be shocked. The young blonde butler had a lot to say to his boss. He was in charge of the young master's daily life. Chairman An had said that if there was even the slightest change in the young master, he had to call him to let him know. It was obvious that he was helping someone raise a child. Chapter 14:30. Before the golden-haired butler could make the call to inform him, he was called to the study by the young master who had finished breakfast. Their young master was really like a character in a martial arts novel. How could a child be interested in the four arts from a young age? Their young master was one. The study was separate and there were also ink, paper, and inkstones that would only be used in ancient China. The golden-haired butler deeply felt that he had made the right decision to come to the Inn family. Those book friends didn't understand what it felt like to have a real-life expert bring in. Their young master was definitely a legendary expert. However, the golden-haired butler didn't know why his young master was looking for him at this time. The only thing he could think of was that his young master would definitely warn him not to say anything he shouldn't say. Don't ask him why he knew. That was how online novels were written. However, Qin Mo didn't say this. Instead, he asked, "Do you have any experience raising children?" The golden-haired butler, Qin Mo, raised his eyebrows. N? The golden-haired butler straightened his posture and temporarily treated it as the young master asking him for advice. In the West, when raising children, we pay special attention to one thing. We have to cultivate the child's independence. After saying that, he observed the young master's expression. He seemed quite satisfied. He continued, "For example, it's better to let the child do it himself." When Qin Mo heard this, he looked up. "May I ask, how old are you this year?" "Young man, I'm 24, the golden-haired butler said in English. After Qin Mo heard this, he put down the notebook in his hand. 24 years old shouldn't be married yet. I've read Western books. It seems like you have no experience in teaching children. So?" The golden-haired butler didn't quite understand this sentence. Qin Mo seemed to be specifying some plan and said to himself, "You still have to feed the baby tiger." The golden-haired butler. "Young master, since you have already decided, why are you asking me? What's more, the baby tiger is still young. You are the same age. Also, change my breakfast to milk in the future." When Qin Mo said this, there was no expression on his little face. The golden-haired butler was confused. "Young master, I thought you didn't like milk?" Chairman had even specifically mentioned this point in the kitchen. The young master had a preference for Chinese food and did not like milk with its fishy smell and foam. He rarely drank it. Why did they suddenly want to change breakfast? Qin Mo's fingers paused when he heard the butler's question. What else could it be? 4 centimeters. Young master. The golden-haired butler glanced sideways and asked again. Qin Mo's expression was calm. From today onwards, I like it. The golden-haired butler was speechless. He thought that his young master was really unpredictable. Just at this moment, he suddenly heard a cute little voice with the aura of a tiger. Momo. The young golden-haired butler turned his head, and sure enough, it was Miss Jo. Qin Mo saw the little tiger walking over with hot water in her paws. He raised his eyes and gave the blonde butler a look. The golden-haired butler did this very well. His eyes lit up as soon as he saw it. His comprehension ability was very strong. No, he had a stomach full of things to tell Chairmanin. He had to calm down and summarize. Bojo, who was in the study room, still didn't know what had happened. She wagged her little tail and watched as her little princess drank the hot water she brought over. His heart was filled with boundless satisfaction. Yesterday, Momo didn't drink the food she brought over. Today, she didn't resist. This was a good sign. She believed that soon, her little princess would agree to buy herself to her. She was so happy. Qin Mo drank the hot water in the cup and his throat felt much better. Then, he looked at the little tiger wagging her tail in front of him. He completely rejected the young butler's suggestion. The little tiger already knew how to take care of him. She didn't need to cultivate any independence. However, there was one thing that didn't develop according to Qin Mo's plan. After the little tiger watched him drink the medicine, she suggested going home. She wagged her tail and said, "Mommy is back. She must be pestered by Dad again. I have to go and act cute. Otherwise, Mommy will be worried." He knew that what the little tiger said was right. But his original plan was to teach her how to write. In this case, he could only stay in the study room. Qin Mo told himself that it wasn't a big deal. In fact, it would be quieter. Bo-jio saw the little princess agree. Then, she stood beside the study table and picked up the brush on the table. She looked at his face, which was half hidden in the light. He seemed to need someone to hug him. As Bo-jio thought about this, she couldn't control herself. She used a little more force and hugged him. However, the brush fell and the other end successfully scratched Chin Mo's face. There was a second of awkwardness. Bo-jio started to realize that she was too rough. She reached out her claws to scratch her ears. Her little princess would definitely call her name again. Unexpectedly, that person just glanced at her. Then, he took out a piece of paper and wiped his dirty face. The more he did this, the more little Tiger Bo felt guilty and flustered. Chin Mo was clear about one thing. Naturally, he had to treat her differently if she was raised by him or not. If he raised her, he had to teach her slowly. Don't rush over like this in the future. Bo-jio nodded and said, Momo, can you not practice your calligraphy first? Why? After Chin Mo wiped his face clean, he gave off the feeling of a little prince. Bo-jio held his hand. I want to bring you to meet my parents. You took care of me for the whole night yesterday. I have to tell my dad. This was a historic development. She still had to learn from her dad about what to do next. Chin Mo paused when he heard her words. He thought that she would definitely come often in the future. From an etiquette point of view, he should indeed greet Uncle Bo and the others. If Grandpa were to find out about this, he would definitely laugh at him again. After all, when had his grandson ever taken the initiative to visit anyone? Now, he was convinced by the little tiger's words. It was really a miracle. But today, Chin Mo really didn't want to stay in the study alone. In the past, he didn't think that there was anything wrong with this. It was probably because there was a little tiger beside him. Suddenly, without her, the study became very cold and cheerless. After finding a reason to convince himself, young Master Chin tidied up. Young Master Chin packed up and took out his own down jacket with a furry collar. He covered the little tiger with it. At this moment, Bo-jio didn't feel any pressure wearing Chin Mo's clothes. Instead, it made her little face look even better. The two of them were wearing the same brand of jacket. Young Master Chin had a taste in clothes since he was young. It was probably because of movie Queen Anne's influence. Now, the two of them were wearing the same series of down jackets and stepping on the white snow. No matter how one looked at them, they gave off the feeling that they were carved out of jade. Bo-jio was very happy because the little princess let her hold his hand and walk away. But there was one bad thing. For some reason, every time the little princess looked at her shoulder, his gaze would change. As for this point, the golden-haired butler, who stood at the door and sent the two children away, must have discovered the secret of why the little young master set the standard for breakfast to be milk. The little young master must be concerned about the problem of height. From the looks of it, the little young master was indeed shorter than Miss Jo. After the golden-haired butler caught this information, he called his boss. After old master heard about this, he smiled so much that there were more wrinkles at the corner of his eyes. Ah! His grandson also had this kind of moment. Was he starting to drink milk because of his height problem? When old master smiled, he rejoiced again that he had brought his grandson here. No, it should be said that being able to meet the little tiger of the Bo family was the most important thing. On the other side, this was the first time little Bo-jio brought someone home as a guest. Her father hid too many little secrets and it wasn't convenient for others to see them. As the little tyrant of the area, those people couldn't understand why she liked the little keyboard. To those who didn't understand her, naturally, Bo-jio wouldn't bring it home. Momo was different. She knew that the little keyboard was very important to her. She even wiped it for her and let her hug it. Anyway, how did little Tiger Bo see her little princess now? Mr. Bo didn't expect that his Lord Jio would bring young Master Chin from across the street to freeload. He had originally set up the image of a man who relied on women. After seeing Chin Mo, he raised his eyebrows lazily. Chin Mo was a smart person. He thought of the adult he saw at home and the adult who was wearing a headband on his head and dressed like a student. He called out calmly, "Uncle Bo." Mr. Bo smiled. "Good boy." This little devil from the Chin family was really interesting. But no matter how interesting he would probably fall into the hands of his Lord Jiu. He knew very well that when his little ninth master wanted something, his passion could melt a person's heart. He could do whatever he wanted. Mr. Bo invited them to sit down elegantly. Mrs. Bo was wearing a business suit and a pair of black high heels. It seemed like she was going out. However, when she saw her daughter, the coldness in her eyes melted. She bent down and carried her daughter up. Was Jiu obedient today? Mrs. Bo looked at Mrs. Bo. Yes, Bo Jiu promised obediently. I wasn't naughty at all. Mrs. Bo smiled lightly and pinched her nose. When she saw Chin Mo standing on the other side, a hint of surprise flashed past her eyes. Her Jiu would never bring little children home. This was the first one. Moreover, he had Chinese blood in him. Mrs. Bo was a businessman. She had seen many different kinds of people. But no child could be more outstanding than the little boy in front of her. It would remind her of the ancient poems she had learned before she went abroad. A bandit prince standing gracefully. He was young but noble. Where did her Jiu get to know such a little friend? Bo Jiu noticed her mother's gaze. She turned her tiger eyes and came out of her arms. She ran to Chin Mo and held his hand. Mom, this is Momo. Yesterday, he took care of me for the whole night and even fed me medicine. Mrs. Bo knew that her Jiu never praised people easily. The father and daughter were always indolent to everyone. They rarely took a liking to anyone. Now, the look in her daughter's eyes wasn't as simple as this boy taking care of her. Mrs. Bo wanted to say something. But she saw the boy make a movement. It was a very small movement. He just stretched out his hand to help her Jiu pull up her sleeves. Her Jiu had been smart since she was young. Her memory was different from other children. Mrs. Bo wasn't at home. Sometimes, she wondered if this kind of memory was imperceptibly influenced by others. This was both a good and bad thing for children. If their intelligence was high, they might not be able to make friends during their childhood. She was always worried that no one would take care of her Jiu. Now, it seemed that she didn't have to worry so much. Among her peers, there were people who could understand her Jiu. It seemed that not only did they understand her, they even did the job of a mother. Thank you, little Prince Mo, for taking care of my Jiu. Mrs. Bo bent down and touched Chin Mo's head gently. You haven't eaten lunch, right? I'll make something for you and Jiu later. Chin Mo didn't say anything. Mr. Bo opened his mouth. Don't you have a meeting to rush to? As expected, you are just coaxing me. Mrs. Bo glanced at him. What she meant was that there was a child around and he, the older child, should wait for a while. Mr. Bo placed his hand behind his back. It seems like I'm going to fall out of favor. It was just 2 sentences. Chin Mo knew what kind of situation this family was in. It was completely different from his family. His mother was taken care of by his father. He took care of everything and was very gentle and considerate. It didn't seem like she was in the army at all. But the dignity of the family was still there. And his mother was always controlled by his father. On the other hand, Uncle Bo was very unscrupulous when he lived off a woman. Auntie Bo was basically in charge of coaxing the 2 children. One was the little tiger and the other was Uncle Bo. Chin Mo thought that he might be able to help Auntie Bo. Before the meal started, he naturally brought the little tiger to the side, leaving more space for Uncle Bo to live off a woman. This was also the reason why the latter found this kid more and more pleasing to the eye. Not bad, he was quite smart. Mr. Bo thought about it and took up more of his wife's time. She used her actions to tell his CEO that she didn't need to care about the 2 children. The one who needed to be cared about was him, the older child. That was indeed the case. Little Tiger Bo's attention wasn't on her mother anymore. Instead, she really wanted to introduce her things to her little princess. This wasn't because of her father. She wanted to be closer to her little princess. When Qin Mo followed the little tiger into the room, he realized that this room was different from the other children's rooms. It wasn't because of the decorations. It was because it was impossible to put 3 computers in a child's room. Moreover, every computer was the latest model. Not to mention the computer programming books scattered on the floor. Although they were very simple. Qin Mo's English had always been good. Chapter 1431. Momo, sit. After saying this, little Tiger Bo glanced at her room. In the past, she didn't think much of it. But now, when she looked at it again, it was nothing compared to the little princess's room. Hence, the little tiger wagged her tail and explained forcefully, I usually like to clean, but I caught a cold yesterday and couldn't clean. The room is messy. Why don't you sit on my lap? After saying this, she patted her leg. Qin Mo didn't care about her. He walked over and picked up one of the bag of chips. His face was cold. This shouldn't be from yesterday. Little Tiger Bo, who was exposed, started to change the topic. Momo, let me introduce my pets to you. This is Little Silver number 1, this is Little Silver number 2, they were all computers. Qin Mo glanced over. He knew that the child needed to be coaxed, so his praise was rather perfunctory. Not bad names. If the computer had sentience, it would definitely jump out and ask the little prince what was so good about Little Silver number 1 and Little Silver number 2. On the other hand, Little Tiger Bo was delighted that her taste was approved. I haven't completed my mission today. Momo, wait at the side. I'll be done soon. Ever since she was young, Bo Jiu rarely trusted anyone. It was probably like what Madame Bo said. This child took after her father. She might look lazy, but in reality, it was hard to get close to her. But in front of Qin Mo, Bo Jiu seemed to be completely open. She didn't know why. It was probably because she met someone who lived a completely different lifestyle from her. Or maybe it was because no matter what she saw, little Princess Qin would be the same as before. Even in such a situation, he would only roll up her sleeves. Bo Jiu felt that meeting the little princess was a blessing she had accumulated in her previous life. Of course, she had to treat her future pet with sincerity. Her dad had said that humans could disguise themselves in different ways. But when she met someone she truly liked, she had to listen to him and give in to him with her heart. Little Bo Jiu felt that she was a domineering CEO. Of course, she had to show this through her actions. She had to spoil the little princess. Now, she had to let the little princess know that she was busy occasionally and couldn't always accompany him. This way, the little princess would be sensible and wouldn't have a psychological gap. When little Tiger Bo thought about this, she felt that she was too smart. She wagged her tail and smiled. Qin Mo watched from the side as she bent over to connect the keyboard. Her tiger paws typed slowly on the keyboard. Her white and tender paws were a little small. However, the speed was very fast, and the code that he typed was something that no one could understand. That kind of scene would usually only appear in a comic. After all, the person typing on the keyboard was too young. Before he had met this little tiger, Qin Mo had thought that in terms of intelligence, he was one of the few people his age. Now that he saw the little tiger typing on the keyboard, the word genius naturally appeared in his mind. The little tiger he wanted to raise was a genius. From the looks of it, he had to pay extra attention to his diet and nutrition. Young Master Qin was indeed young Master Qin. Seeing such a thing, the first thing he thought of was how to raise people well. This time, she was fast. What a joke. The little princess was still waiting at the side. She had to show off her boyfriend power when she was doing her mission seriously. The little tiger buried her head in her computer program and didn't notice that Qin Mo was looking at her as though she was a pet. He was probably too engrossed in deciphering some things. When the little tiger came back to her senses, she realized that half an hour had passed. Oh no. She had forgotten that the little princess was at the side. Would the little princess feel that she had neglected him? Little Bojio thought about this and sat up with a roll. But when she turned around, her round tiger eyes were wide open. Her room seemed to have become a lot tidier. Then, she looked at Chin Mo, who had placed her code book at the side. In an instant, there was only surprise left on little Bojio's face. She couldn't control herself and pounced on the cold-looking boy. Wasn't that enough? She even rubbed her little tiger face against him. Momo, why are you so virtuous? I'll marry you in the future, okay? Chin Mo wasn't willing to be pounced on like this because the more she did, the more he could feel the difference in height between them. But a certain little tiger didn't know how to restrain herself. And what did she mean by marrying him in the future? Little Bojio, virtuous is used to describe a girl. When Chin Mo said this, his tone was a little gritted. Little Bojio didn't get it at all. She looked up with bright eyes and her tiger ears perked up. But you're so capable. You're virtuous. After she finished speaking, she lowered her eyes and kissed him naturally. I'll give you a kiss as a compliment. Instantly, Chin Mo's fingers froze. Even the words he wanted to say were blocked by the word chirp. The place that was kissed felt hot again and again. Coupled with her soft face, it was as if a feather had gently brushed against the bottom of her heart. There was an indescribable itch, and there was also the milky fragrance of candy. It was hard for people not to pay attention to it. Chin Mo pushed the little tiger away and tilted his head. Bojio wasn't sad at all after being pushed away. She patted her little tiger's sleepy head and smiled at the boy whose ears were gradually turning red. This was the bad thing about her little princess. She was too shy. In comparison, she seemed like a little gangster. But she could still understand her little princess's heart. He must be thinking that if he performed well, he would get a kiss. He would definitely perform better in the future. Fortunately, young Master Chin didn't have any achievements in psychology. If not, he would definitely take a deep breath after knowing the little tiger's inner thoughts. Bojio was elated for a while. Then, she said seriously, Momo, even if you're not virtuous, I will still kiss you. Chin Mo only gave her one word. Heh. The cold and aloof little prince. Bojio understood that he was being arrogant. It wouldn't affect her performance. Chin Mo looked at the little tiger in front of him and narrowed his eyes. He realized that a certain someone didn't understand the difference between men and women. Also, it wasn't good to kiss whoever she liked. After all, there was still the little red hair called William. With this thought, Chin Mo turned his face and pinched the little tiger's ears. He realized that he wasn't as smooth as he had thought when he was doing this. When they stood together, he was a little shorter than her. This caused Chin Mo's voice to be much colder when he spoke. In the future, don't kiss anyone you see. You shouldn't use this method to express your love. Bojio tilted her head. Don't use this method? What should I use? I usually give them a hand gift. A hand gift is for a boy to a girl. Besides, there isn't a hand gift in China. Did she want to kiss anyone she saw? Bojio blinked. But we aren't in China now. Don't you have basic manners? Do you usually attend banquets? Chin Mo interrupted the little tiger. Bojio shook her head. I don't. Do you follow Grandpa to socialize like me? Chin Mo asked again. Bojio continued to shake her head. Then, why do you have to give them a hand gift? Chin Mo added. If you give them a hand gift, it will only make people feel greasy. Alright, Bojio didn't want to be treated as a greasy uncle. She was so cute. Then, I won't kiss them. The little tiger said obediently, but in reality, her little face was still mischievous. Chin Mo was used to it. His expression was as cold as before. He didn't say anything else. Raising a child wasn't something that could be done in a day. Moreover, he was raising a little tiger. Some habits had to be corrected slowly. Little Tiger Bo suddenly seemed to have thought of something. She pulled her little princess's hand over and opened one of the computers. One of her little hands moved as though she was modifying some program. Even though Qin Mo's intelligence was high, he was still lacking when it came to computers. He couldn't understand what the little tiger was doing. He could only see his name flashing. Then, a certain someone's tail wagged twice. Momo, use the mouse to play this game. It's very fun. It will take less than a minute. Even though Qin Mo didn't understand the code, he knew that this was a simple little game that the little tiger had made herself. Is this the mission you were talking about? Bojo replied. My dad gave it to me. If I don't do it well, I will eat his instant noodles. I would rather die than eat his noodles. It could be seen how dark Mr. Bo's cooking skills were. Qin Mo wasn't someone who liked to talk about his elders. But little Tiger Bo was. It wasn't easy for her to find someone to complain to. Little Tiger Bo counted her fingers and started to criticize her dad's various shortcomings. He always plays rock paper scissors with me. In order to get more love from my mom, he even says that he cooked the noodles because the noodles he cooked can't be eaten. Last time, he added squid in the noodles. The squid was too disgusting and he didn't cook it well. He said that he should cherish his food and brought a pot out to feed the kitten. In the end, even the kitten didn't want to eat the food he cooked. Yet, he likes to show off his cooking skills. Speaking up to this point, the little tiger wagged her tail again. She looked at her little princess seriously and said, Momo, later, if my dad takes something for you to eat and says that he cooked it for my mom, you mustn't eat it. It's poisonous. Okay. Qin Mo agreed casually. In his heart, he was thinking about what the little tiger usually ate if that was the case. However, he was already prepared for this. After all, the memory of her and Uncle Bo going to their house to freeload food was still fresh in his mind. Little Tiger Bo didn't know that her plan to pretend to be obedient that day had been exposed. She used her small hand to poke the screen and told Qin Mo, Momo, you can move the mouse now. Qin Mo didn't have any feelings towards games. But no matter what, he was still a boy. He found it interesting. He pressed the button with his right hand and the little zombie on the screen jumped forward. The simplicity of the program meant that it was easy to operate. There wasn't any difficulty. At first, he thought that he would just have to jump out of the small wooden coffin and get the blood fruit. To Qin Mo, this wasn't a challenge at all. Unexpectedly, when the little zombie he was controlling received the blood fruit, a line of words suddenly appeared on the screen. Congratulations to my little prince Momo for successfully passing the level. I'll give myself to you. Chirp. Then, on the screen, the special effect of the stars spread out. Every star had the word Momo written on it. Qin Mo's fingers paused. He seemed to be able to see the broken stars reflected in his eyes. He had to admit that the little tiger was very good at making people happy. But, the program in the game was written a long time ago. Just now, you just changed it to my name, right? When Bojo heard this, her eyes widened. Momo, you're so smart. Qin Mo didn't say anything. If this program was written a long time ago, what was the previous name? Bojo didn't realize that the little princess beside her was a very possessive person. She was still asking for praise. Am I very good? Qin Mo retracted his gaze and replied faintly, MMH. That was it? Little Tiger Bo thought that after the little princess played the game, he would agree to be her pet. She had called her father and told him about this. Her father said that this was a strategy. Why didn't this strategy work at all? This was the first time she allowed someone to play the game she made. She didn't feel any sense of accomplishment at all. In the past, she had always given herself to her and wrote her name. She had never changed her name to someone else's before. Also, the game she made was quite fun. At the start, she could clearly see the smile on the little princess's face. But that smile didn't last for long before it gradually disappeared. In the end, it became much colder. It seemed like she couldn't listen to her father for some things. Her boss's style was too bold. This wasn't good. It didn't match her reserved image. She had to be self-reliant so that the little princess could accept her as soon as possible. Little Bojo redefined her position. Forgive me for not knowing that her little Princess Chin only had one thought in his mind. That was the day after tomorrow. He wanted to meet the Mr. William that the little tiger had mentioned. After all, he didn't like this kind of person who enjoyed the benefits he deserved one step ahead of him. In short, this was a perfect misunderstanding. On the other hand, little William, who had just jumped off the school bus, sneezed loudly twice. Then he turned his head and looked behind him. For some reason, he felt a chill at the back of his neck. This must be his illusion. Little William rubbed the tip of his nose. He had golden hair and blue eyes. In addition, he was originally a foreigner, so he always looked a little unrestrained. Tomorrow, he would be able to go out with Joe to eat hamburgers. This time, he must ask his father for some money. If not, he wouldn't have enough to eat. But recently, he heard that a Chinese kid had moved into this area. It was rumored in their school that he was good-looking and looked like a little prince. He wasn't bragging. With him around, who would dare to call themselves a little prince? Chapter 1432. At that time, little William did not realize how naive his thoughts were. He waited until the next day. Little Tiger Bo had always liked to eat hamburgers. In addition, he rarely went out. This time, he was going out with the little princess. No matter how he thought about it, he was excited. She climbed Shin Mo's wall before the sun rose. Unfortunately, after being discovered, little Princess Chin didn't talk to her for an hour. Bojo caressed the bridge of her nose, walking 2 rounds beside him. In the end, Chin Mo heard someone's stomach rumbling. He frowned. Come over. Bojo was standing by the side of the bed. When she heard the little princess's words, she moved closer. Chin Mo helped her take off her hat before asking, "Do you know your mistake?" Bojo blinked. "I know." Looking at that expression, it was impossible for him to know. Chin Mo wanted to ask his family to put a few more potted plants outside. He wanted to see how she was going to do those dangerous things with all these things in front of him. Little Tiger Bo was still immersed in the excitement of going out to eat hamburgers. She couldn't understand little Princess Chin's thoughts at all. But then she was glad again. Because little Princess Chin took a piece of cake out of nowhere and put it in her mouth. Delicious. The outside was crispy, but the inside was soft with a hint of sweetness. It wasn't like the snacks she had eaten before. It looked like it was made in China. Ever since she was young, little Tiger Bo had always been interested in local food. She glanced over with her round eyes. She wanted to eat a second one. But she became reserved. Chin Mo could tell what the little tiger was thinking. He smiled and looked at her obedient look. He pinched another piece and placed it in her mouth. His voice was cold. Remember to eat breakfast in the future. Little Tiger Bo nodded perfunctorily. Her attention was focused on the delicacy. Momo, what is this pastry called? Chin Mo paused. It was obvious that he didn't want to say the name. However, little Tiger Bo didn't seem to have any intention of giving up after eating 3. As he wiped his hands, he spat out 3 words, wife cake. Wife biscuits. What does wife mean? At this moment, her vocabulary was still limited. The main reason was that Mr. Bo never addressed his wife as his wife at home. He always called her Mrs. Bo. Hence, until now, little Tiger Bo had never come into contact with this term. However, little Tiger Bo didn't want the little princess she wanted to buy to think that she was uncultured. Therefore, she tried her best to make her face look as calm as possible. In her heart, however, she was thinking that when she returned home, she would have to ask her father what his wife meant. Actually, the reason why Chin Mo didn't want to say it wasn't just because of the name. It was the story behind it. It had to be said that this was also because it was Chin Mo. Other people at his age might not know that there was a story behind the wife cake. This was inseparable from his family's upbringing. Old Master Chin, who had passed away, was the founding general of the country. When he had taught Chin Mo, many things had been imperceptibly influenced. Every object had an allusion to it. This was not something that every general could do. But for the 1,000-year inheritance of a great country, Old Master Chin valued him very much. Over time, Chin Mo had read countless books. When Old Master Chin was still alive, every time he saw little Chin Mo sitting at the desk reading, he would let him go out to play. At that time, Chin Mo was still wearing camouflage clothes, which was different from what he was wearing here. He gave people the feeling of a little man. He only told Old Master Chin that after training, he liked to read books. Many people were lamenting that the Chin family had such a child, which was simply used as a benchmark. That was indeed the case. There was one thing that the young butler was right about. Their young master had the temperament of a young master from an ancient aristocratic family, just like a royal family. Indeed, that was right. In the modern world, there were many outstanding children. But the cultivation of an aura definitely didn't rely solely on the accumulation of money. Especially this kind of ancient nobility. It depended on one's character, upbringing, and everything that one had absorbed. Chin Mo was such an existence. He watched as the little tiger beside him ate the wife cake. A string of illusion appeared in his mind. Fortunately, the little tiger didn't know the meaning of a boy giving a girl a wife cake to eat. Otherwise, who knew what else she would do? Even if she raised her as her own. But the indifferent young Master Chin still wasn't used to being kissed like this. After all, he only wanted to raise the little tiger, not marry her. Bojo didn't know what the little princess was thinking. The wife cake was too delicious and the black tea that the little princess fed her. Accidentally, she ate 6 pieces. When she wanted to eat more, Chin Mo frowned. Chin Mo frowned and took the tray to the side. Eating too much sweets wasn't good for her teeth. This idiot really didn't know anything. Chin Mo now understood the helplessness of raising a child. There was nothing left to eat. Little Tiger Bo patted her clothes and stood up. Today, Bojo didn't wear her pajamas. Instead, she wore a pure white sweater and the black down jacket that Chin Mo had given her yesterday. It matched Chin Mo's current attire. Chin Mo was very satisfied with this. After they went out, he was worried that the little tiger would feel cold. He took off the scarf around his neck and wanted to wrap it around the little tiger. It was also at this moment. The awkward moment came. He was shorter than her. Although he didn't need to stand on his tiptoes this time. Young Master Chin still raised his eyebrows. His expression didn't change but his tone was very calm. Don't drink milk for breakfast in the future. After Bojo's little face was wrapped by the scarf, her round tiger eyes seemed even brighter. It was very attractive but she didn't understand why the little princess didn't allow her to drink milk. Chin Mo saw the confusion on her little face. He said calmly, "From tomorrow onwards, I will ask the butler to send you porridge in the morning. There will also be soup dumplings made at home. Don't you like to eat these?" Compared to milk, of course, soup dumplings were better. Bojo really didn't expect her little princess to be so considerate. She stretched out her hand instinctively and hugged the boy's waist in front of her. "Momo, you are so good to me." Chin Mo's face heated up. He didn't know if it was because he had a selfish motive for sending this breakfast or because she hugged him again. The scene of 2 children hugging each other was still very eye-catching. Grandpa happened to go out late today. When he saw that his grandson was being hugged but he didn't push the other party away, the surprise in his eyes became even more obvious. He knew that his grandson treated the little tiger of the Bo family differently but he didn't know that it was different to this extent. It had only been 3.5 days and he had already become so good. Was his grandson's cold and aloof persona about to crumble? But this was also good. The friends made when they were young were usually the most heartwarming. If Grandpa knew that his grandson wasn't making friends but was raising a child, he would definitely feel vexed. On the other hand, the golden-haired butler at the side felt that his young master was seriously making a plan to raise a child. It was really scary. Little Tiger Bo had a different view on this point. She didn't feel that she was being raised by her little princess. After all, her father had said that the person who made the decision financially was the one who raised the family. For example, her mother was the one who raised her and her father in their family. She had planned to pay the bill when she arrived at the hamburger shop. She had to show her family's financial resources to her little princess. Other than eating a lot of meat, this was little Tiger Bo's goal. The An family didn't lack chauffeurs. This was the first time his grandson went out after he came overseas. Grandpa An's feelings were complicated. He was afraid that his grandson wouldn't like this place and would prefer to live in China, so he specially sent a Lincoln limousine. It had to be said that Grandpa An's style was very exaggerated when it came to pampering his grandson. On the other hand, when Chin Mo saw the limousine, he asked the chauffeur, who was wearing a tall hat, to change to another car. The limousine was too big. He sat in the back and couldn't carry the little tiger on his lap. This was what he had read in the book yesterday. It was best to carry the child on your lap when taking care of a child. That way, you would know that you valued her. Chin Mo thought for a moment. It was most convenient to sit in a car. He was shorter than her after all. Little Princess Chin was very concerned about his height, but he didn't show it. On the other hand, little Tiger Bo was a little surprised when she was carried in the car. Usually, she was the one who thought of ways to pounce on the little princess. It was really abnormal for the little princess to take the initiative to hug her. Was the little princess not shy anymore? Bojo tilted her head and studied Chin Mo's expression. She could only see the coldness on his face. She couldn't see anything else. At the start, Chin Mo felt a little uncomfortable. After all, he had never hugged anyone before. After driving for 3 minutes, he got used to the milky fragrance on the little tiger's body. Bojo opened her eyes wide. She sat in his arms and looked left and right through the car window. Every time she passed a street, she would introduce it to Chin Mo. Momo, you must go and play here. My dad brought me here and it's very fun. Momo, there is a river on your side and across the river is my dad's school. In the past, before you came here, I would always go there to play alone. My dad is still a postgraduate student. Can you believe that a person like my dad is also a postgraduate student? My dad is too dissolute. I have to help my mom keep an eye on him. There was a period of time when I went to spy on him every day. In the end, that guy only knew how to sleep. He even placed me under his desk and made me sleep there. But when the bearded Professor Robert teaches, it is really easy for people to fall asleep. Anyway, it's not easy to describe. The scenery outside was very good. In addition, the baby's voice was soft and cute. Everything seemed to have entered a European-style painting. Everyone who lived abroad knew this. Due to the environment. The streets here were very clean. In addition, it had just snowed. There was also a sweet fragrance in the air. When they passed by the square, there was even a flock of white pigeons flying past. The people walking on the street liked to hold a cup of coffee in their hands. The European-style buildings rose from the ground. Most of them had clear colors. This was probably the charm of this city. But Chin Mo didn't look at the scenery. Instead, all his attention was on the little tiger in his arms. Other than rolling up her sleeves. From her words, he came to a conclusion. The little tiger he was going to raise seemed to have a good memory. Not all children could remember the way. Even adults would get lost. Take his mother for example. She would never be able to tell north from south. But for the little tiger, not only could she tell the direction, but she could also remember the appearance and direction of each street, as well as what was there. This was no longer about the sense of direction. It was about memory. Chin Mo raised his eyebrows. He had to admit that the more he interacted with the little tiger, the more he felt that his superpower was nothing. Because there was someone here who was similar to him. She seemed to want to confirm something. Chin Mo pulled out a book from the back of the chair in front of him. It was a book that his grandfather often read. It was an English version about business. This shouldn't be a problem for the little tiger. He flipped to a page. Little Bojo. MMH? Little Tiger Bo was still mischievous. She was thinking about how to kiss the little princess without being noticed. What's written here? Chin Mo pointed at one of the paragraphs. Bojo lowered her eyes. Her eyelashes were long as she read a paragraph. After Chin Mo finished listening, he closed the book. Little Tiger Bo realized something. Was the little princess asking her a question just now? It was really too cute. She wouldn't laugh at the little princess's poor English. After all, she had just started to learn the Chinese characters seriously. Just as she was about to give the little princess a kiss to comfort him, the little princess spoke again. The little princess spoke again. How much do you remember about the part that I just read? Little Tiger Bo thought to herself. He was asking her for a question again. He was really arrogant and cute. He angrily repeated what he had just said. She was waiting for the little princess to look at her with admiration. However, there was nothing. Chin Mo just placed the book down and smiled. As expected, it's just as I thought. This little tiger was the same as him. She had a photographic memory. Of course, memory could be developed later on. She just needed a little bit of talent and a memory bank. It wasn't impossible. Anyone who had watched The Strongest Brain would know. Every object and place has a connection to it. As long as you remembered these connections, remembering things would be very easy. That was because it would form a small three-dimensional map in your mind. This kind of map could only be perceived by yourself. In the past, when he displayed this ability, others would be shocked. They should really come and see the little tiger he was raising. In this aspect, she seemed to be stronger. Bojo's ears perked up as she looked at the smile. She felt that the smile was too beautiful. It was like the snow that had just melted outside. Did the little princess want her to kiss him when he smiled like that? No, she had to restrain herself today. She still had to eat later. If she paid for the kiss in advance today, she would be too happy after eating, but the little princess wouldn't let her kiss him. That would be too sad. Just as little Tiger Bo was thinking about this, they had reached their destination. The black low-profile car stopped by the roadside. It was a plaza with an amusement park. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.